All right, good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the April 13 PPACG Board of Directors meeting. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for your participation. As always, if I could ask Andy to establish a quorum, let's find out who we've got in attendance today.
Okay, super. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, with the chair's indulgence, I'll identify who I see online, and then maybe we just go around the room and do introductions real quick.
That will be fine.
I see Councilmember Yolanda Avila online, Commissioner Dick Elsner, Commissioner Cami Bremer. Anybody else online as far as board members?
That looks like that's
Easily
it.
have a quorum, so yeah.
Yeah.
If you'd like to go
And
around
I'll
the room.
just, as Andy has recommended, we'll just do introductions, quick introductions. I'm Stan Vanwerf, Chair of PPACG and El Paso County Commissioner. And to my right, Sharon.
Good morning, Sharon Thompson, Mayor Fountain.
Mike Huebner, trustee Palmer Lake.
Holly Williams, El Paso County Commissioner.
Nancy Hendrim, City Council District 5, Colorado Springs.
Eric Stone, Teller County Commissioner.
John Graham, Manitou Springs, Mayor.
Robert Zuluaga, Woodland Park City Council. Roland Gardine, Mayor Pro Tem of Calumet.
Richard Zamora, CDOT.
And Dave Donaldson, City Council, Colorado Springs.
Andy Gunning, PPACG.
Great, thank you very much. And do we have any, we've gone around the table, but do we have any new participants today that maybe would like to introduce themselves? And since everybody's introduced themselves at the table, I think I'm really talking about those that are in the chairs off on the side. Any new participants today? All right, thank you very much. Let's go on to item number 2, the agenda approval. Are there any questions or comments with regard to the current agenda, today's agenda? All right, and hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll second. Yeah.
Second, Holly.
Okay, I'll just make sure that the PPACG team knows who the motioner and seconder are. Did you catch that? Please repeat.
Yeah, motion by Dave Donaldson.
Second by Commissioner Williams.
There we go. Thank you. Any last minute questions or comments about the agenda before we vote? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And are there any opposed? All right, very good. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Let's move to item number 3, public comments and presentations. And the first one is public comments. And I know that, Andy, you'd like to introduce at least one person who will offer some public comments. And then we'll open it up to the floor and see if there's anybody else.
Sure,
Please.
just want to introduce Kent Matthews, and he's going to say a few words about a really awesome event that we hold every year for family caregivers that provide support to seniors in the community. He's going to talk about the details, but he probably will leave out the notion that it is a really fantastic event and great participation, and really, really glad that we're able to put this on every year. So Ken.
Andy and the board, thank you for taking a couple of minutes. We are doing our annual Caregiver Pampering Day. This is the 19th year that we have done it. And the intent is to pamper family caregivers, those people in our community who are caring for a senior that is 60 or older. And we even held it last year in the middle of COVID. That's how important the event is. The day includes a free continental breakfast. In fact, you see the agenda. There's an opening. Our opening speaker this year is going to be Cindy Noel. She just published a book called Courageous Hearts. It's about her journey as a caregiver when she was caring for her husband who had Alzheimer's. But there's going to be a free continental breakfast, opening speaker, and then the caregivers can participate in pampering activities, which include hand massages, yoga, emergency preparedness, aromatherapy, mindfulness meditation, music therapy, making gratitude jars, dog therapy. And then that all wraps up with a free lunch provided by Mackenzie Place. And we do provide caregivers with respite care if they need somebody to be with their family member so they can come to the event. And then could you go just to page 4? So the event is absolutely free to all of the caregivers. This is the back page of the program that we'll be handing out to the caregivers, and it lists all the logos of the businesses, companies, and agencies in our community that are providing either volunteers or money or material to make the event happen and make it free for the family caregivers. Registration for the event closes this Friday, April 15th. And caregivers can register by going to ppacg.org/pampering day, and then they can register online.
Wow, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is.
We already have 60 caregivers registered, a little bit below our normal of about 80, but I'm thinking that's because we're still coming out of COVID.
Great. And are there any, yes, please, Mr. Stone, any comments or questions?
I'm just looking through the, thank you, Eric Stone, Teller County Commissioner. I was just looking through the logos there. Don't know if you've reached out to Daybreak, which is the nonprofit that does respite for caregivers in Teller County. I just didn't see him on the list there.
We have, and they said no for this year.
Okay.
But the other is that the unique thing, we do have people from Teller County who come down for the event. Vast majority of our caregivers who participate are from El Paso County.
Sure.
But we don't exclude anybody from Teller or Park.
Right.
So, okay.
Yeah, I just know that up there, of course, we
Yep.
look down the hill for so many resources.
Yep.
So thank you.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions? And I'm going to do something a little unusual. First of all, I think this is awesome. I know this is not a voting item, Andy, but I'm going to make a motion for support of Pampering Day to thank the caregivers and the sponsors for holding such a great event. And this would be basically a sense of the board as a basically a proclamation to thank the participants and those that help our seniors. So if I could ask for a second.
I would be happy to second that, Nancy.
We have multiple seconds. I think this vote might go pretty easily. So, okay, are there any other comments or questions? Thank you. All those in favor of that motion that I just made, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Would you be kind enough to carry that message to the event for us?
You will. I will definitely make add that in my comments in the opening. So yes, I definitely will.
Thank you very much. I
You're welcome.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Let us move on. Do we have anybody? We'll stay in item 3A. Or is there anybody else that wishes to offer public comments? Anybody from the public? All right. Is there anybody online under those conditions and that you have to speak up? Otherwise, we won't know. And I'm not seeing anybody joining in. All right, let us go now to item 3B, the renewable water loop presentation by Mr. Jeff Hodge, as I understand it, from Town of Monument. And Andy, were there any introductions you wish to do? Are we good to go?
Good to go. He's actually with Dunella Water District, correct? Or correct me on the name? Thank you. Sorry, if you push the face on your center right to activate.
You see a red dot there?
The mouth. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, now everyone can hear me. All right, perfect. Yes, thank you for having me. Jeff Hodge with Denala. I'm the general manager for the Denala Water and Sanitation District. Here under the invite of the Town of Monument. I want to thank them. They've been very supportive of us researching this, and one of the 4 signatures of the memorandum of understanding that we have between ourselves, Monument, Woodmore, and Cherokee, excuse me. So, but with that, I will kind of give you an overview of this. I see some familiar faces, so some of you have a really good idea of how we got to where we're at today and where we're trying to move forward with this. Really tell a little bit about the story. I think you all are aware of our physical surroundings and hopefully somewhat educated on the Denver Basin. But up there on the Palmer Divide, we sit over a nice sweet spot of the basin where we have a lot of Denver aquifer wells, the Denver basin, but the Denver aquifer wells, and then the Arapahoe wells that are a little deeper. We stay out of the lower layer. But with that, even though that's a nice spot, we also have 2,000 or 3,000 foot above that. Very, very good water, very ancient water, and probably has sufficient supplies for quite some time, but lifting it that high out of the ground is quite an economic challenge. If you would go to the next slide so we can kind of see the area. But there's the lay of the overall region. And I think we understand that we have been pumping that out. But with that, about 20 years ago, actually before the turn of the century, many of us up north have gone out looking for renewable water sources, surface water, something that we can then import into the area. Because even though we have a beautiful water supply underneath of us, back to that, it's very expensive to pump it out. And the wells probably have a 20 to 30 year life cycle on them. I know, speaking for Denali, we're kind of at the end of it. And as we speak, I've got about 6 wells down that we're rehabilitating. I'm hoping to get another 5 to 10 years out of them. And we've actually let a contract to drill a new well. And I think that the price of those are one of the aspects too, that we'll probably be into it for about $2.5 million. That's actually on the lower end because there's already a raw water line that runs by there. But just kind of keep that in mind, because that's kind of that multiplier that you'll see as we move through this presentation versus what it would cost to run a pipeline. If you go on to the next slide, please. Once again, you can kind of see the Denver Basin there. Runs from north up there around Greeley to just the south, just south of where we're at here. And then out to the east, you can kind of see it's bordered by the mountains, and out towards Lyman. Once again, towards that bottom part of there, you can see we're in a deeper part of the aquifer, but once again, set on the Palmer Divide. So that adds to the extraction costs. Next slide, please.
If I could maybe just ask a question, and also for the board, if you have any questions, Wes, we're going along. I know that across Colorado, across the locations that are above this aquifer, there's a lot of tapping into the Dawson aquifer. I think some people are now also tapping into Denver. But my question is there anybody tapping into the deeper aquifers, Arapahoe and Laramie Fox? And maybe the answer is yes, I just don't know.
We're definitely into the Arapahoe. That is a nice, very nice source. And on the edges, some of that, and I know some people tap into the Laramie Fox, a lot deeper and very solid rock when you get down there. That is definitely the bottom of the bowl. With some of the pictures I have here, these are actually outcroppings around our area. So the edge of that bowl comes up. And so, yeah, as we get out east, we talk about the Calhan and the Falcon area, they're actually tapping into that, but it's a shallower aspect of it. Yes, ma'am.
Great. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm Nancy Hendrim from Colorado Springs City Council. Can you just fill in a little bit the context for the presentation? I'm assuming this will be great information for us. Is there another reason that you're presenting this to this council?
Yes, thank you. Excellent question. I apologize for that. But yes, what we're looking for is to let everyone know what it is that we're doing, and there's a lot of different projects going out there that everyone's studying with this. Obviously, water is a huge topic with this. We see that there's calls on the Colorado River. There's not much snowpack this year. So back to we've been looking into bringing in these renewable resources for well over 20 years. And now we've finally kind of gotten at that crossroads where we think we have a project and the timing's correct to move forward with bringing back some of the water we have on Fountain. So Fountain Creek, some of us, Denali, for instance, owns 300 acre feet down there. Woodmore bought the Chilcott Ditch and the Calhan Reservoir. And one of the other things we're looking at is that as we pull this water out of the Denver Basin, being that it's a confined basin, we're actually allowed to use it again and again. Right now, all of our water is going through for the first time. So what we're looking at is that then downstream, south of Colorado Springs, we could divert those waters that basically the Denver Basin waters that we've been extracting. We can pull those off, and then some of our other surface water. So that's the portion with the
And
northern
my
aspect.
apologies to interrupt. Nancy, just to make sure it's clear, this is actually a project, maybe you know this, it's actually a project about water reuse. Kind of another way for us to really have water for a long period of time. Commissioner Williams, you have your hand raised. You have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to state a few points as the armchair water quarterback. So a lot of this is in my district. A lot of the homeowners, if I'm correct, dig into the Denver or the Dawson.
Correct.
And they're frequently having to re-drill their wells because the Denver water level is going down. The Arapahoe is typically where a lot of the developers will dig into for especially things like they're watering their golf courses. I know that Classic Homes has a really big one up in Flying Horse North. And I don't know as if we've tried to get Laramie water that's actually drinkable, but as he talks about the project, he talks about what Cherokee Metro has done on the west side of town. The really interesting thing is by their recycling program, they've been able to turn off the upper wells in their Black Squirrel Creek basin, a different basin from this one. And those wells have refilled up. They've not refilled. They've actually, because they turn them off, there's enough water for regular ranches and homeowners, and it saves a big cost to the homeowners out east because they don't have to re-drill their wells. So I think the ultimate purpose in talking about this, which we'll get to, is if you get this up into the monument area, you get a lot of people who it will help because they won't have to re-drill their wells anymore because the water will be coming from a different source. And as another side note, the Aurora Wise recycling program, the city of Parker runs fully on recycled water to every house. So that's this is something that's been done in Colorado before, and we can use every drop of water to extinction until it goes over the line.
Blant Havener, Town of Palmer Lake. The other part of that is a lot of our homeowners aren't digging into the Dawson right now because the Dawson is the shallow, the surface water. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing about this project that really helps people like the town of Palmer Lake that's really important is our spill. So the reservoir can only get spilled based on water levels. So the spill can happen in April and happen in June. And this year was the first year we've been allowed to spill both times. Spilling the reservoir is the only way the lake gets full. The only way the lake gets full is the only way that the Dawson and that area gets replenished because that's the surface water. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. And maybe for, I know we need to let Jeff continue, but I can say for this board, but it may also be true in your own, on your own boards. But the Board of County Commissioners is very, very interested in future utilization of water reuse in El Paso County. So we are actually going to put some money into it. Maybe that's study money. We're not quite sure, but there's some work going on to kind of get something going in El Paso County with regard to water reuse. So yes, Nancy, go ahead.
Just a thought. I know Andy has talked with many on the board, maybe everyone, about some regional conversations. One coming up, I think, is not around water topic. It's more around, it's around
Air quality and
Air quality.
transportation.
but potentially in the future,
Mhm.
water for the whole region would be a very, very valuable regional conversation for us.
I appreciate that concept, and I think PPACG is potentially one of those outstanding fora, maybe the best one, to have a regional conversation about this. So, but anyway, let's let Jeff continue.
Yes, thank you for all the questions and keep chiming in there. If we could move forward to a few slides that kind of have more of the area, but on the regional aspect of things, that just shows the declining wells. You all know where we're at with that slide. If we kind of the northern utilities and who's there, we understand that one. The eastern one, we were just alluding to that one with Cherokee and the Black Squirrel and where their treatment plant is. There's the potential with the southern entities. They're doing quite well right now. They have their challenges. This starts at the very bottom of that slide. You see the little blue dot there. That is the Calhan Reservoir. So that's where this would be collected at ultimately. It does show the ditch there. The ditch goes back up and about halfway, probably back up to Colorado Springs proper, is where the ditch is diverted from. We'll see if there's another slide that then shows the whole area. Yeah, but I was
Yes.
going to go to the, oh, go ahead.
Yes, please.
Oh, that
Go
one
ahead.
right there,
This
please.
is really important to me. So if you go back to that slide where you were talking about the reservoir.
Okay. So,
And my confusion in what you just said was in the south, they're doing pretty well. My understanding
Oh.
is that there's a whole part
the next one up, the southern utilities. Yes, thank you.
there
Perfect.
that Fountain has actually declined to allow development because they don't have enough water. So I'm really confused by your statement.
Well, I think with that, it's more they don't have the infrastructure in there. And I can't speak for them, but back to the northern entities, we have those water resources available down there.
We actually have one of our water engineers, Mike Fink, was online earlier, if you wanted to speak to that issue. Mike? Are you still there?
I see that he is online still.
And look, I may be taking us down roads we don't need to go in this presentation. So please feel free to pass it off to a later
No,
conversation.
no, I appreciate that.
I would like to address the issue because that's kind of a bold statement to have come out in a meeting. So Mike?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is Mike Fink. I'm the Water Resources Manager for the City of Fountain. Jeff, we recently in Fountain concluded a 1.5 year long water master plan update. And it did point out the strengths and the weaknesses that we have. Our strengths are that we have a good portfolio of water rights. We have a lot of storage. Our weaknesses is the inability to serve the periphery of Fountain with the infrastructure we have in place, and we do need to bolster our treated water throughput. So that's the reason that we are taking the positions that we're taking now. It's not that we haven't got a plan, and in fact, the loop is one of the 6 water treatment options that we are very interested in, and I'd approached Amy and Jesse, who are 2 of your 4 signatories, to just express our interest in this. We are also, as you noted, that this is delivery to the Callahan Reservoir area through the Chilcot Ditch. Fountain is the 2nd largest shareholder in the Chilcot. So yeah, we're part of this in some way, shape, manner, or form to see how this fits with all of the other projects that we are at different stages in. We, count us in for the studies on these, because we feel that there is no wrong answer to finding a way to make water reuse work.
Thank you. And I'll just say, I plead huge ignorance here, right? I know what I've read in the paper. This is stuff I'm going to be voting on as a city council person, as a board of director for the utilities for Colorado Springs. This is the first time since I've been elected that I'm learning this and having this conversation. So please know I'm not trying to be provocative. I just am trying to learn.
I didn't take it that way. I just felt like it needed to be kind of addressed.
Well,
So,
Nancy, you and I
yeah.
are going to have lunch then too. But no, I wanted to say, so when it comes down here to the Callahan Reservoir, Denala and Woodmore, I believe, own water rights in there.
That is correct.
Yeah, there's the Chilcot Ditch. So those are rights they've all already purchased. So those are their water rights. And then there's a third piece of this that we won't talk about today, which is Triview Metro. And they own water rights down by the down by Pueblo Reservoir. And they're trying to work with Colorado Springs Utilities. So,
Well, if I may, they are a majority shareholder in the FMIC, Big Johnson too.
okay.
So they're playing in that area. And we work closely with Jim McGrady and Triview on this very thing. And as you're seeing, it's a very fluid thing, literally and pun intended. But that the last 2 years has, been hard too, not meeting in person. And then all of a sudden with money becoming available through the ARPA funding and some of the other federal funding, that has really moved it up to the very forefront of this. So yeah, I apologize for not having the great communication with everyone. Definitely looking to partner with everyone on this. And then to your question earlier, we've just finished up a study through the Pikes Peak Regional Water Association with CSU to look at the reuse aspect of this. You know, water's water, the conveyance is that, but it was under the guise of reuse. Because really that ties back into we've been looking at the NMCI, which is the Northern Monument Creek Interceptor, which is an opportunity to potentially get out of the sewer business up on the north end. But if we got in more technical details, there's some challenges to that. But what we were all worried about is how do we get those returns back to us? And that's where we've sat down through that organization. We've all participated, you know, and come up with what it would cost. There's an initial study with that, and that was just finalized. So hopefully very soon your staff will, and really it was like last week or so. So hopefully your staff comes to the city council or the CSU utilities and presents that. There are great opportunities with that. And just to sum it up, it looked at moving it off of Fountain through one of those two reservoirs, Big Johnson or Callahan. I think the important thing to note that isn't depicted on here, but basically, about a third of the way in on the right is where the Southern Delivery System line comes that's heading north to Bailey. So that was one of the reasons that this is a great area to look at. That easement's already there, that water line's already there, bringing that raw water up so that it could be treated at the.
And Jeff, if you might, you know, if you go to that a representation of the loop, you were actually on the chart a few minutes ago.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think that is so helpful in kind of understanding what the loop concept is. So I know you were going to spend a little bit of time on that.
Yes, thank you. Because yeah, that depicts the waters coming down, whether open flow through Fountain Creek or some of it being conveyed through the collection system and treated at the, as you see, well, it'd be the JD Phillips plant, and then captured once again down below. Once again, there's different options there. Today, I'm here representing the loop aspect of this, which would take it off at the Chilcott ditch and move it through Callahan. But then once again, you can see the yellow line that is the SDS line coming up from Pueblo. So there's opportunities to pre-treat that water, maybe not pre-treat that water. We've looked at all those different options with that on the CSU reuse side of things to get it in that line. Actually, the study that we're just almost at the end of on the loop shows that it's a small incremental cost to go from pre-treatment to full treatment. Full treatment, back to what we're already hearing here, is that water would be then deliverable to any of the southern entities that would like to participate. Same way then it could come up. And I think one of the other things to point out real quick is that from Callahan Reservoir to the Tamlin Tank, which is off of Mark Sheffield and Tamlin Road, if you look over to the east, there's a brown tank there. Cherokee has a line from there all the way up to Sundance. So that's one of the other aspects of the loop that makes it very, very enticing. That construction's already done. They're looking at changing, as we heard somewhat earlier, that with how they operate their basin. So there's scales of economy there that are already in the ground that we could utilize. That southern portion is the part that still needs to be decided how big it can be. I think it's safe to say that the demand is more than likely there along the eastern corridor.
Yeah, so if I might, and Nancy, maybe, you know, for your benefit. So outside the city of Colorado Springs, on the northern part of El Paso County, obviously we've got massive growth going on there. There's a lot of water consumption. When that water gets consumed, goes into the sewer system, of course, then it gets treated so that it can be, so it gets processed so that it can meet EPA requirements to go into the creek. And then that travels south on the western edge of that loop there. And the concept here is actually to recapture it because it's still actually owned. Those molecules of water are still owned, but right now what we're doing is we're just letting it continue down the creek towards Pueblo. So what we would do here is we would recapture that water, send it into the fountain area, get it processed into potable water, then pump it in an existing pipe north, which you can see on the eastern side of those arrows, and pump that back up into the northern part of El Paso County. And there's potential connections to SDS because the processing is in that proximity. And the interesting concept behind this is that a lot of the infrastructure, the creek itself, a pipe going north on the east side, a lot of the infrastructure is actually already there. So it's not a small investment. It's you know, it's $100 million plus investment to fill in all of the empty parts. But the potential exists to actually get about 80% recycling of the water that's already owned and consumed on the northern side of El Paso County. And going from a 1-to-1 use of water to a 1.8 use of water is huge. That is huge. And if this were to go forward, if we end up with enough gumption, right, to get to the investment of this, we would have, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, we would have the largest recycling system in the state of Colorado as a result of that. Larger than anywhere else in the state. Is that a true statement?
That would be very correct, yes.
Yeah. So it's this concept is really, really intriguing because it's kind of brilliant in its design aspects, because a lot of the infrastructure is already there. There's just, instead of starting from zero and spending a lot of money, we don't start from zero. We got a lot of it in place, and we've got, I think I had heard, I don't know if the number is accurate or not. I heard 160 million investment. Maybe it's more now as we get closer to figuring out what the real costs are. It might be more, but that was the last number I heard.
Yeah, it keeps increasing, but yeah. I think we started out about 138. Safe to say that in present net worth with the study, it'd probably be around 200 million. But that's why I pointed out earlier about $3 million per well. So you get 100 of those. They're only making 400 gallon a minute. They have a very short lifespan of under 25 years. Whereas if you apply that same money to this pipeline, it's going to have a 100-year plus life cycle to it. One of the other aspects of this is that Denali is another, for instance, Colorado Springs, same way, is that we export some water off of the Arkansas. Triview is looking to do the same. So we have some of those surface renewable waters coming in. We have the groundwater. Triview and Denali, we're looking at, we're in the process of studying storage for this. It's ASR, aquifer storage and recovery. Because once again, we've been pumping this water out of a nice aquifer. Fortunately, it is, solid sandstone and stuff, so it's not collapsing or as it's being dewatered. So it has that storage space in there. So same way, this water would be cleaned up, pumped back up there, stored in the ground. As you get over the kind of invisible ridge out there and you get out towards Callahan, and those are the Upper Black Squirrel, another huge basin. I mean, imagine it has over 200,000 acre feet of storage out there. So that's the bigger picture with it. But yes, the more immediate aspect is that some of the pipeline already exists. The construction methodology anymore for something like this doesn't take near as long. And I think there's the desire and the need for it. Once again, we've been studying for well over 20 years. And now we've brought forth the loop, and once again, one of the reasons that the loop has some enticing advantages is just back into some of the limitations that our northern entities have when it comes to not being able to deliver water from Pueblo County or the reservoir up there, because some of their service area is actually over the divide. So technically, some of their water goes on the ground and heads north rather than back into the Arkansas Basin. So that's one of the aspects with Woodmore. I think we brought up Flying Horse North. They've been actually a partner of this project too, because that line runs very close to that project. But really what we're looking at is that holistic, altruistic approach to the entire county. None of these are exclusive to any of the others. They have some of their different legal challenges initially, but they provide that resiliency, the redundancy, and the drought proofness that, can, as the commissioner was pointing out, that, puts El Paso County in that position that we want to be, with all the other aspects going on to support the industries that we have here. We know those are of national importance. So it firms those up that we have a water supply that will last for hundreds of years through whatever climate aspects we have, droughts, floods, whatever. We can take that water and store it these different places. So those are really the highlights. I think so much of the rest is that you all understand who we're serving, where we're at. And then it really gets down to some of the costs. We're still studying this, but yeah, the other day, the CSU reuse study that we did with Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority, for treated and conveyed just from the Big Johnson area over to the Bailey was almost $18 a thousand. Sorry, if everyone's used to doing it in 100 cubic feet, but didn't do all those conversions. Currently with the loop, we're down around $6 a thousand to convey it all the way to the north. Once again, even if that doubles, we're still $6, $7 less expensive with that. We're looking into that, but I mean, that's our biggest concern with this is to plateau that cost to our customers to provide them with the stability and a reliable water source going forward. I think the bigger one is that back to being in front of you all was to broach this subject, let you understand that, we have been working on these for decades. I think the opportunity exists with funding and the need for this, that we're trying to move forward. We do have the memorandum of understanding between the town of Monument, Woodmore, Denala, and Cherokee. And that is the understanding to move forward to study this and collectively be able to apply for that funding. So the signatures are still open, plenty of spaces that we can add to that if anyone's interested. And then most importantly, get the dialogue going as you all were talking about here, that this is a regional aspect of things. But most importantly, as you need to know, is that we have been working with all the entities in this area to look at what those synergies can be with existing infrastructure, existing technology. And that's actually what made this easy. I mean, there was stacks and stacks of studies going back to that 20 years. So really it was just taking the consultant and giving them that material and having them dig through it and come up with, what you see in front of you here. So with that, don't want to take up too much of your time, but if you have any of the questions, please pose them now. And obviously as a group, we'd be happy to come back and provide updates and additional information.
Yeah, Commissioner Williams, have your hand raised.
Yeah, and I know that this would be in addition, although I don't know much about the Colorado Springs reuse system. In addition to theirs, this would help relieve a lot of pressure on our region that we're experiencing growth-wise. But what I may recommend to the Colorado Springs Utilities Board President, since I happen to know him, is that maybe he bring the loop in to talk to the CSU board about, because then you all can get a bigger idea about it and talk, and you have staff that attends our Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority board meetings. And so they would also be able to pitch in on that presentation to help get an idea of what we're trying to do out in unincorporated to help take pressure off of Colorado Springs utilities.
Yes, Commissioner Stone. Thank you, Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, just an additional benefit of this, and I know that Stan and Holly, you, as well as other commissioners online, we hear from other commissioners around the state about the concerns that they have in the rural areas of the drying of their counties, which primarily is caused by front range municipalities and water districts going out and acquiring rights, and then literally drying out the land, taking water off the land to where it's no longer productive for farming or intensive agriculture. And so there's actually a double-sided coin to this. Not only are we being responsible about the water assets that we already own or that you already own, but it's also helping out other areas of Colorado to help keep their economies strong. Because ultimately, you dry up agricultural lands, then you're actually drying up economies in these rural counties. So there's additional benefits that reach far beyond the benefits that are obvious directly in front of us.
And I appreciate that comment, Commissioner, because without naming any other counties, we do have some other counties on the Front Range that have recently gone down that path of trying to exercise the water rights that they own, and they are experiencing an enormous amount of resistance from those rural communities. So I think to your point, that is an important part of what people on the Front Range should consider. So again, back to this is actually reusing water that we already own instead of trying to find more water. Even if you have those rights to more water, just reusing the water you already own, it seems to make an enormous amount of sense to me. And it is also about being a good neighbor to our neighbors, right? Yeah, so thank you. Are there any other questions? I did, yes.
Just
Mayor.
a general comment. I think there's going to need to be some salesmanship on this, because the comments I'm hearing are concerns from people that think you're recycling pea water. I didn't really want to say it real loud. But all water is recycled over and over and over. There is no
We call it
Anyway.
fondly the poop loop.
Okay.
So yeah,
You
if
said
they,
it
if
better
they
than me.
comment
Okay.
about that. Now, of course, that won't be the official name when it's finally opened up, but you know, this is, and I went down and toward the plant where they treated it.
Yes.
And they get it to the state standard and tastes great is what they say. And you know, they haven't had any complaints from their citizens.
Right, I'm
in
just saying though
Cherokee.
that is an issue that people are saying that aren't familiar with this and don't know all the process as to what is being done. And
Mhm.
so just a lot of that is being kind of thrown out there. So we're gonna need to have some educational opportunities on people
Yeah.
that this is just like the water that comes out of your tap currently by
Better
the time
than
it gets
that.
back to you.
Yeah, that's very, very good point. That's been an uphill battle for the last 30 years with these.
Yes,
projects.
Councilman Donaldson.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff, in some of your later slides, you talk about, hey, this is expensive. Raising funds only from participants would require major rate hikes. And you also say, you know, federal infrastructure appropriations offer opportunity to accelerate the program. Can you give me or give us a sense of where that is? Is the ARPA funding going to cover this? Are you going to need, how much of a rate increase would it be if only the participants covered it? Can you?
Well, yes,
talk-
excellent question. Thank you for bringing that up. The initial part that was the big impetus of forming the MOU so that we can move to some sort of authority that has that bank account that can be put in line for the ARPA monies and any of the federal monies. I think one of the other is that for each entity, it's a little different on their pricing structure. You know, for Denala, my money will come from not drilling additional wells. So that's how we're looking to fund it, is that I have to drill one well right now, as I mentioned earlier, trying to extend the lives of the others. So hopefully in this 5 to 10 year period, that's where my portion of this capital will come in. Even if it is just the 4 partners, you know, back to say that's $25 million, you know, you divide that out by the 11 wells I have right now. I'm drilling one new that might have to be replaced in that time frame. So each district has a little different pricing structure with it. I know one of the things we're talking at the loop level is to have that authority, that entity hold that debt, and that way we pay it in the take or pay delivery cost. You know, so back to referencing the $5.82 we're currently at, you know, that goes to $13 or $14 per thousand. That's where we think initially that funding would be to fund that debt. Ideally, yeah, any of the monies that we could get our tax money back through any of those federal programs or anything would be ideal and very helpful with this. So kind of a broad brush there with different pricing schemes with it.
The MOU is between who?
Right now,
Mhm.
it's between the town of Monument, Woodmore, Cherokee, and Denala. And it is just that, here's how we're gonna pay for these studies and where we're going with it. So only the financial commitment of that.
And then I think it might be your final slide is a steps forward slide, something like that. Can you maybe just, our next steps, can you just maybe go through that? Like, what are the next steps?
Certainly. That's project needs. Next step, there we go. So the cost study preliminary results available. We have that final draft right now. Hence some of the numbers that I'm loosely quoting there. So that is at the 90% completion phase. The CSU study project, that's the Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority CSU reuse study that I was referencing. That one has been finalized like last week or so. So that one's available. An important factor on both of those is that we use the same consultants, so that the same methodology, the same individuals, we're doing both. So there's as close as we can get to an apples to apples comparison on costs, ideas, methodology. And then back to the final list of the founding members. You kind of heard that, you know, there's initial 4. We're open to having any of the other parties sign on, just so that we have that strength in numbers and that everyone has that seat at the table. And as you see here, the most important thing is that we have the door open for later. I've been at the tail end of way too many projects that, you know, we wish that we just would have put another, you know, 4-inch diameter pipe in there, you know, that at that time it would have been cheap. So many of those people that, oh my gosh, $2,500 an acre foot for whatever type of water was, expensive at the time. And, now today they would give you $15,000 or $20,000 for it. So that's one of the things that we're definitely trying to fund up front with this, so that we have the availability, so that it truly is a regional project in the future. And then you talk about the post-construction partners and how that would operate. That's more on the technical side of, does it become an authority? How do we operate, or who turns the valves? Who calls for water? By the time you get to that point, relatively, that's having been through similar projects, that's the easy part. We're in the difficult part now, is getting the education out there, getting the participation. You kind of heard that we're all developing the different funding plans individually and collectively. We've not ruled any and all of it out. We're applying for the ARPA funds. We've submitted stuff to the feds. We're trying to put together the group so that we can collectively lobby these different organizations for financial help with this. Don't want to belittle the engineering and construction, but once again, we're putting pipe in the ground, a couple pump stations. I mean, that's the fun, easy part once we get to it. And then the water comes out. I think that's the important part, though, is that, as soon as it's completed, water can be delivered the next day. We physically have that water there. And I think that's very important for the whole region. We have adequate water supplies in El Paso County. It's just back to, reusing them and getting the most value out of them. I think that's where we're at now. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
And just one final comment, quick. The Cherokee Metro Water District has already built the recycling state facility out by Peterson Air Force Base. That was $80 million. That's already completed. So it's already in operation. That's a big portion of the project right there.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. And Nancy, I think you wanted to make another comment.
I just had a quick question, and I'm sure there's a very good answer for it. And I'd like to know it, which is why we can't use the SDS system that's already built, since it's essentially parallel to the proposed pipeline.
Can I say Pueblo County?
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, there's restrictions in the 1041 permit that we have from them. Denali does receive water from that project also through CSU, and it specifically says in there that none of this shall be out of the basin. So that's one of the, we have technical workarounds for that, that would deliver that. It's just a matter of money, but that's the only reason that can't happen right now.
I think an important point about that, though, is there's possibilities maybe in the future with regard to that level of cooperation, because the infrastructure is close together. And it might be, say, for example, I'm just going to make something up here. It might be if one of those pipes needs to have maintenance done on it, maybe we share pipes. These two systems could share pipes. And then maintenance can be done, and that could actually be a benefit to both SDS and this project if this were to go forward. And that may or may not necessarily be some form of violation with the agreement with Pueblo, because under certain circumstances, maybe it becomes negotiable and allowable and things like that. So I think, I think the future portends there could be some things that could be done here.
Yeah, totally agree. And we've actually have some sketches of exactly that, of how it can go into those reservoirs, come out, go into SDS lines, go into loop lines. And hence that's our redundancy and resiliency, that we're gonna be up and running 24/7, 365 days a year. It's just those other little legal, political things that we need your guys' help on in the future. People.
Yeah. And I know that we need to move on, but one last point, one last point that I would like to make is, while there is plenty of water in the aquifers in northern El Paso County and going north, and there is plenty of water there, the problem is access and the cost of access. And it just keeps going up and keeps going up. And eventually, I don't know in the end where this one will ultimately price out on, cost per acre foot or whatever terminology you wish to use. But it's virtually a guarantee that if there's not an alternative found for the aquifers, that there will be a crossover point of cost reached. in which case water recycling becomes more cost effective. Let's just be hopeful that that's not some outrageous number, you know. Let's hope that it would be a more reasonable number, and maybe we're already at that crossover point. I don't know the answer, because some of this stuff isn't entirely priced out yet. So, but there will be a crossover point at some point. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions with regard to this topic? We put a lot of time into that, but water is a passionate thing in Colorado. So.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Shall we then proceed then to the consent items, item number 4, and these will be voted on as a whole, item 4A, B, and C. So if I would just ask the board, are there any questions or comments regarding any of the items on the consent list? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approved, Sharon Thompson.
Second, Darcy Sheening.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. One last opportunity for anybody to ask questions or offer comments. And hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, so that passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on to item number 5, and our first one is item 5A. Who would like to kick it off?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is the CDOT 10-year plan. Let's see if I can do this succinctly. Back in January, we brought you the roadway 10-year plan, and we brought you the transit 10-year plan as an information item. The next month in February, we had that the transportation 10-year plan, but there was a change to the transit 10-year plan. So we said, hey, let's just approve the roadway portion and we'll hold off on the transit. So that's what we did in February. Then in March, our plan was we were going to adopt the transit 10-year plan. And then the very next agenda item from those two 10-year plans, we were going to have sort of what we were going to do in the next 4 years, the sort of thing. And those were on one sheet of paper, because just prior to that meeting, the CDOT had looked at doing a off the top for transit operations. So the decision was made, let's pull this item from the agenda. And because we pulled the item from the agenda, we didn't adopt the transit 10-year plan, and we didn't do sort of the roadway fiscally constrained short range items that we were going to do in the near term. So that gets us to this month. Transit is still out there. I believe at the STAC meeting, hopefully we will come to some resolution on the transit portion of the 10-year plan, and we will bring that back at a later date. So what we're trying to do today, and again, hopefully I've laid this out succinctly, is from that 10-year plan that you adopted in January, and that we would like to bring to you for approval today, the focused portion of that 10-year plan, basically what's going to be done over the next 4 years. And if you could scroll up to the actual projects, and Shane, stay frosty, we might need you here, right? So this is the list. And so what we've brought to you today is for you to adopt this list. And again, you've seen this list before, and there's been questions about sort of the wording on the managed lanes. And I think we put in the words possible told, and that was something that was moved off the list. That's why it was in red. And again, at that previous meeting, Shane answered a lot of questions about all the different projects. So this was pulled again because of the confusion with transit, not any issues with this particular list. So you have seen it before. That being said, this is America, and you can ask questions about anything you want to ask about. So if you want to open this up again and spend time going over the project, Shane is here, and we're happy to do that. But if you do have that memory of that earlier discussion, hopefully this is an item that can be relatively quick and that you can adopt at a time if you're comfortable doing so. So with that, open up to questions for me for process, open it up to Shane for questions on the actual projects. And we'll go from there.
Very good, Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, mine is hopefully really easy. So on the I-25 Hov lanes, that is removing it because of fiscal constraint. And then the 2 green ones are being added.
That is correct. Shane Ferguson.
And those were still within the top like 10 projects.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's my question.
All right, very good. Are there any other questions from the board at this point? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move approval of the item number 5A just presented.
Well, John Graham.
Okay, there's, in case there's anybody that still has questions, we still have an opportunity. We do have a motion in a second. Are there any questions on this item, item 4A? Oh, yes, please, Lisa Hickey.
Lisa Torman Hickey, Transportation Commissioner, District 9. Just want to say we look forward to putting some cement and asphalt on the ground here with this 10-year plan. So thank you for your consideration. Just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment. Yes, sir, please.
Roland Gardine, Report 10 Callahan. Your second item on the list there, it says US 24 East widened. Where?
Yes, sir. Woodman to Garrett Road. It's the continuation of that 4-lane section. It ends there just close to Garrett Road.
So at the past Big R.
I believe so. I don't recall exactly where the Big R is, but it's basically it's narrowed down to a 2-lane section, and then that's where we're carrying it forward from Garrett Road all the way up to Woodman Road.
And that's going to be done this year or next year or what?
No, what this will allow us to do is begin design of that project. So we'll start designing that here within the next year to year and a half. Probably have it ready and available for construction. Don't hold me to this, but we'll have it probably in about 3.5 years, probably available for construction at that time.
And the reason why I'm asking is because there's a real safety issues there. There's been a number of people killed there.
Yes, sir.
So this would be a real good thing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Gardine. I think maybe we can let the record show that if there, because of loss of life out there, if there's anything that CDOT could do to address that so that we can do the best we can for the safety of our citizens. And I don't know what that means or what's in the realm of possible, but if there's a way to accelerate the design studies so that maybe the construction might be able to get in a year earlier. And since we've heard that from one of our duly elected representatives and board members, Mr. Gardine, I appreciate CDOT's consideration for that. Okay, thank you. Appreciate actually you bringing that point up. That's excellent to do that. All right, are there any other questions with regard to item 5A, which has been moved and seconded? All right, and just in case there's anybody online, we're not seeing all the names there. Please chime in if you have any questions or comments before we vote. All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? And hearing none, that passes unanimously. Let us move on to 5B.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hopefully we'll bring the transit back to you next month.
Thank you.
5B, Laura Cruz is going to kick this off, our mobility coordinator.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me this morning. As Andy mentioned, I am the mobility coordinator for the AAA and PPACG. So working with agency partners and providers that provide specialized transportation in particular. Today, I'm bringing before you just a request for releasing a public comment period. We are actually concluding the RFP process for 5310 and PPRTA funding. 5310 funding is FTA or federal transit funding for individuals with disabilities and seniors. So transportation of those individuals. And so we took on this program January 2021 for Mountain Metro Transit to better coordinate funding that we currently already administer with Older Americans Act dollars and coordinate with those providers to make sure that we're distributing the right flavor of funding to the right program and provider. And so today I'm bringing before you the recommendations from our technical review subcommittee of the RAC, so the Regional Advisory Committee, who helps make the recommendations and reviews all the applications for both Older Americans Act dollars as well as 5310 and PPRTA funding. And so we have ran these recommendations through the TAC and through the CAC. These take a slightly different path than the Older Americans Act dollars because of FTA requirements. And so the recommendations from the TAC and the CAC support this recommendation we're bringing before you guys today to open up for public comment. Just some highlights. We have budgeted $816,000 for these two programs, 5310 and PPRTA funding that we receive from the city each year. And so we go through that process of analyzing applications, but also having past data as well as experiences with agency partners. And so we score each one of these applications. So included in your packet was the criteria that we use for scoring. And the three agencies that applied this year were Envita, Silver Key Senior Services, and Fountain Valley Senior Center. These are actually the current recipients of these funds. And so through the application process and the review process with the TRS committee, a couple of things were highlighted. If you want to look at the scoring here, Envita scored higher, just slightly higher than Silver Key Senior Services in the scoring. The major reason for that is Envita is our only provider that actually provides for individuals that are below age 60 that are disabled. Silver Key Senior Services and Fountain Valley Senior Center are primarily focused on just seniors. So the difference in this funding is we have that other subset of population that we need to be serving with the 5310 funding. So Envita scored really high on that because they just have a more diverse population that they serve. Silver Key Senior Services scored very high as well. They have the manpower and the capabilities and the financial management systems in place to really manage this federal funding. And they just do great services in this region. The note here is actually the TRS committee decided this year to take a step back from funding Fountain Valley Senior Center with these funds with the intention to help build their capacity for managing federal dollars in the future. Smaller organization, great organization, does amazing work, but the same rules apply for a smaller organization than it does for a big organization. So we want to work with them to help build that capacity. I also want you guys to understand that we were looking at transportation dollars this year as a whole. So the 5310, the PPRTA, and the Older Americans Act dollars. And just, again, making for sure that we're looking at it from the perspective of placing the right dollars with the right agency and the right capabilities. And so when we were looking at this holistically, taking into account that the recommendation was not to fund Fountain Valley this year, we took that into account in the recommendations, and y'all will see that in the future when the TRS brings Older Americans Act dollar recommendations to you guys. We took that into account in the allocations of funding for Older Americans Act dollars. So these are the numbers that we're presenting today. And we, like I said, we're not asking for you to vote on this. We're asking for you guys to vote on an opening up a public comment period in case we do have any comments, and we want to give the opportunity for the community to weigh in on this. Any questions?
Great. Are there any questions from any of the board members?
It's just a process question. Why would the board need to vote for opening on public comment? That seems like that would be a given. I mean, I'm fine to do it, but
I can tell you that's our practice, but I think that's still a good question. Let's just ask that question.
I would think since we're handling FTA dollars, we're the direct recipient of an FTA grant. There is a higher level of
Okay.
accountability and board involvement and things like that. So
Okay.
I think it's consistent with our practice that we
Okay.
put together.
That's
It's a
fine.
good question.
Yes.
I'll make the motion that we open it for public comment.
I would second that with the provision that Sharon said that was okay, because I know the Fountain Valley Senior Center is pretty awesome. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. We do have a motion in a second, but I had a similar question and just wanted to, they are a great organization. I don't want to harm them in some way because they do provide a lot of services. So it maybe, I don't know if the mayor would like to comment to that or not.
I respect the decision that was made in this and all the boards and everybody that's been working on this and support it.
Okay, very good. So we do, thank you for that comment. Yes, go ahead.
And
Councilman.
Chairman Vanderwerf, I think it's worth pointing out that at the work session, we went over this and we are going to purposely look to fund Fountain Valley with other funds, just not through this program.
That's correct. And we actually allowed them, once we knew this recommendation was coming from the TRS, to go back into their application and add some funding for building some of those capacity needs up in their organization for the future of receiving these funds. So we work with our providers pretty hard to make for sure that they have the tools that they need in order to be successful. And so taking this step back is really hoping to make for sure we have a stronger step forward.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? All right, and hearing none, we do have a motion in a second, and this motion is to release this for public comment. So we'll have a public comment period, and then we'll come back to this board for a final vote. All right, very good. All right, let's go ahead and proceed and vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I see a thumbs up. Thank you, Commissioner Bremer. And are there any opposed? All right, thank you. That passes. Appreciate the board's consideration on that. Let's move now to item 5C.
Jessica McMullen is going to kick this one off, and then after she's done, I've got a few additional comments I'll make around our Air Quality Awareness Week.
So good morning, board members. I'm Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communications Manager. So every year the EPA hosts an Air Quality Awareness Week during the first week of May. In 2022, this is going to be May 2nd through the 6th, and the theme this year is Be Air Aware and Prepared. The goal of Air Quality Awareness Week is to promote events that increase air quality awareness and encourage people to not only check the air quality index, but to be more aware of how they impact air quality. Some of the daily topics this year actually tie in really closely to our region's needs. The very first day is wildfire and smoke. So we are planning on doing some communication on this. This is a great way to follow through on the outreach goals that we put into our ozone advance plan that we're working with the EPA. So the Air Quality Technical Committee has been discussing ways that we could engage our region and raise awareness of air quality and ways that we can all play a role in reducing ozone pollution. So not only do we have the proclamation before you, but we are encouraging all of our members to also support and promote air quality awareness, whether it be through the week of Air Quality Awareness Week, or just helping promote the many small tips that every individual can do to help reduce our contribution to ground level ozone.
Great. Yes, go ahead.
And just to
Andy.
build on that a little bit, gives us a chance to wear our Smokey the Bear outfit. Maybe finally, we don't have one yet. But yeah, to Jessica's point, if there's a chance for local jurisdictions to also kind of help us amplify this message, that would be super helpful. That could be at a minimum, just reposting social media postings that we put up, on our website between now and through the week of Air Quality Awareness Week. Or if you have the wherewithal and the capacity to put stuff on your council agendas to pass similar resolutions, that would be very much appreciated. And we can work with you on the language around that as well. And we can come to your meetings if that's necessary. A couple of the things that I was going to mention as well, and I don't think they require board action per se, and we haven't had a chance to really talk about this, but I would suggest as well that that maybe we work up a guest opinion piece that maybe we submit to the Gazette. I was thinking maybe something co-chaired by our chair and myself, and we tell the community we're working on air quality issues. It's a serious issue, especially with ground level ozone, especially the fact that we're not meeting the federal standards right now, and that comes with a lot of implications. I think if we can really get the word out to the community and let them know what they can do, that would be a good way to kind of keep the ball moving forward. It's been in the news a lot lately, and I think a lot of folks have read about how Denver may be, EPA may be starting the process to redesignate Denver and the North Front Range area down a notch as far as ozone non-attainment. They're in serious non-attainment now. There's 5 levels, so that's the 3rd level. They're about to get downgraded to severe, with EPA starting the process to notch them down another level. So it's a big deal. We're fortunately not reclassified at this point, and I think I know we still have time to try to drive our numbers down a little bit. We're not meeting the standard. We haven't been meeting it the past 2 years for a variety of different reasons. One thing I did want to share is we've been digging into this a little bit lately to find out similar regions that are kind of dealing with the same thing that we're dealing with. And thank John and his staff for coming across this study. But Oklahoma City, the metro area, just finished a study last month, actually, that indicated their attainment for ozone. They studied what the financial impact would be to their region if they went into non-attainment. And over a 20-year period, because that's the classification period we're looking at a minimum, they estimated it would cost the regional economy $9.5 to $15 billion if they went into non-attainment. And that's consistent with other regions as well that have been studying these economic impacts. We knew that the San Antonio metro area studied the same thing. Austin, Round Rock, Corpus Christi, they're all kind of trying to get their arms around what the consequences are. I mean, obviously it's got major public health consequences, but it has these other economic impacts as well. So I just wanted to get that in front of the board. And I think we need to kind of help drive that conversation a little bit further. And last thing I'll mention, one thing I want to bring back to the board in May is we've been having some conversations with other partners across the region about our board, PPACG, sort of co-convening with other regionally oriented partners to have a conversation with the community around what can we do about our air quality challenges? How does that tie in with the future of our transportation system? And how does that also tie in with our built environment? Kind of builds off, Mr. Chair, when you had your State of the Region address back in January, you kind of challenged the community to see how we can grow while preserving our character and our quality of life. And I think that will be part of that conversation as well. I've had some good conversations with a couple of different potential partners over the past several weeks. The Chamber EDC, UCCS, Visit COS, Norwood, El Pomar, and a couple of others, and they're very interested in engaging in this conversation. So what I'd like to do is flesh this out a little bit more, bring it back to the board in May to kind of get the go-ahead to keep developing this a little bit further. My suggestion would be that we're not gonna be able to do it during the summer and ozone season. And with a lot of other things going on, we probably need to wait until, I would say, after November and do it the tail end of this year or very beginning of 2023 to do a community-wide conversation like this. But just wanted to put that on your radar as well.
Yes, thank you, Andy. And I think, a component of that is there are certain times in the year when ozone is the only thing that, we've had some challenges about whether or not we're compliant. But there's me, I am not interested in any mandates from a public agency, but we could maybe be asking the community at large, our industries, and our public agencies to see if there's any kind of voluntary kinds of things that we could do together as a team. And one of those was maybe in some high risk of failure ozone monitoring time periods, maybe asking our industries to be a little bit more sensitive to some of their production processes that are ozone producing. And I don't know if that, to be honest, I don't know if that would work or not, but I think the conversation across the community, I think, is an important one. I do have one other question, and it kind of, since you brought it up about this, we just had the administration, I think I read it in an article the last day or two, state that they have an interest in increasing ethanol in automobile fuels from 10% to 15%. And then the comment was made is that that would increase smog. So here's my question. I guess it's partially technical. Is smog caused by ozone? Is a 10% to a 15% increase of ethanol in fuels actually going to be yet again another impact in our community about whether we may or may not meet our ozone EPA requirements?
Potentially, and Councilmember Zuluaga and I were chatting about this before the meeting started. He shared an article that he found around that very topic. So I promised I'd reach out to our partners at CDPHE and find out what their take is on that, because that would have some additional serious consequences. It's
For what
about trade-offs.
for whatever it's worth, if that does actually increase ozone levels and the administration goes forward with it, they perhaps should ask the EPA to back off a little bit on ozone requirements, because the administration might be actually, with the intended interest of doing something about reducing the cost of gasoline, might have an unintended consequence of causing all kinds of communities across the country to be out of ozone compliance. So maybe we can maybe try to have a serious dialogue with the administration about that. Commissioner Williams and then Commissioner Stone.
Yeah, on that actual point, I heard on the news yesterday that the EPA wasn't very happy about that because it's considered dirty gas, and especially in the summertime in the Midwest, it's, they weren't very happy about that. So, we'll see how that goes. But the last time we were in non-attainment, so when you're in non-attainment, you're paying a lot of money to get back into an attainment. Did our region, that was when we did emissions testing on vehicles?
We did vehicle emissions testing and a lot of other new permitting requirements that were put in place on industries. That was for carbon monoxide. And a lot of regions across the country were in violation and non-attainment with cleaner burning engines, especially catalytic converters. That got a lot of regions off the hook and helped us get back into attainment. I don't think there's a silver bullet solution out there for ozone, unfortunately. But yeah, we're actually still at the very tail end of getting those requirements for carbon monoxide off of our backs. There's still some additional action that CDPHE has to take to close that chapter of our recent history with carbon monoxide. But yes, it was a 20-year period that we had to show that we can maintain the standard.
Thank you. Commissioner Stone.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, it's kind of just obvious to point out that E85 as a fuel gets about 25% less fuel economy than standard gasoline does. And using more fuel means we're introducing a lot of different additional pollutants in the air that are just completely unnecessary. I realize the idea behind it is for domestic production of a portion of our energy and of our fuel, but the back end, second order, third order effects of doing this is quite frankly ridiculous and irresponsible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. E85 meaning 15% ethanol. Yeah. Yeah, I know that some of those fuels are less efficient. I guess somehow, some way they have less density, less energy content and so forth. So you actually need to consume more of it, which, I'm not I don't have the scientific background of this, but gosh, you would hope. Let's be hopeful that somebody has some sense about this at the federal level and that they're recognizing that, maybe doing this, it robs Peter, but then you have to pay with Paul and it doesn't really actually help.
I believe the phrase sense on the federal level might be an oxymoron. So.
I resisted. I looked at him. I don't know if I saw that. I resisted.
We can have plenty of conversations about that at a later time, but I believe there are many indications of some challenges there. But having said that, I am interested in knowing if I'd like for us to continue to do research to see if this is going to actually harm our community about attainment and ozone, and if so, then maybe make some steps, make some efforts, maybe to either ask the administration to not do it or ask the EPA to back off or something, right? Otherwise, it'll be yet again another activity done outside of our control that will cause us to be in non-attainment again, which has the potential harm of us having to spend a lot of money to meet attainment, harm our industries and businesses somehow, some way to meet attainment because somebody else somewhere else did something. And that just sounds, once again, very unfair to me. Mr. Zulaga.
From the article I read, the president was suggesting using E85 through the 3-month summer period instead of E10, which is generally accepted over the summer period. And for Colorado, with the amount of tourism we have, pumping that much extra pollutants into the air, 5% extra in the gas, to me seems like it's going to shoot us in the foot. I don't know what our rates are in terms of air particulates from fire versus from cars in the state, but to me, that's the area to look at. It's like we would willingly be increasing the amount of particulates from our exhaust from not only ourselves, but all the guests who come through our state in that summer months. So
I think that's a point well taken. Andy, could we maybe ask CDPHE to give us some research? It sounds like you might be doing this to one degree or another. Get us an answer on what kind of impact that would have if the administration were to go forward with it. Because if we get an answer that doesn't look right, maybe we try to take some active steps to either encourage the administration to either not do it or maybe allow Colorado to not do it, because we have all of the tourists coming here. So to Mr. Zulaga's point, it'll be exacerbated because of what happens in Colorado.
Sure, happy to. And I'll reach out to, thinking out loud, probably Dr. Cog and the MPO to the north as well, and see what their posture is and see if we can maybe kind of get our collective thoughts together and put some pressure to push back on it.
Okay, great. Well, those were kind of side topics to whether or not we wish to vote and support a Air Quality Awareness Week. And Jessica has provided some inputs to that. Do we have any questions specifically to the item before us for a vote? Yes, Mr. Zulaga.
Jessica, can you define for me Thursday's activities, environmental justice? Exactly what is environmental justice?
You ask a beautiful question. Typically, that's used in reference to places where the physical and built environment have created inequities. So when we specifically purchase land for highways that break up low-income neighborhoods, therefore heavily increasing the pollution to those residents in that area, that is one of the environmental justice type situations. Denver had this happen on I-70, 225, I think it's 70, where they recently had to rebuild and reconstruct, and they've had to spend a great deal of money to make up for what they did 20 years ago, where they damaged so many people and so many residents. So environmental justice is about making sure that where we build and how we build in air quality isn't being inequitable. That's the nice way I'll phrase it.
If I could ask it, is the word environmental justice used in the proclamation, or is it in the, I'm missing it?
It's just in the daily topics from EPA.
Page 48.
Page 48, thank you.
Scroll back one page on the monitor.
Okay, so that is actually in the introduction of the topic, but I don't believe it's actually in the proclamation itself, which is on page 50. Is that accurate? Okay.
But Mr. Chair, I believe Mr. Zulawaga's point is it would be one of our, what is this? This is what we would highlight on that day, environmental justice on Thursday.
I am not either.
Yeah, and I'll make the point, neither am I.
I'm very comfortable with it.
Can you explain why?
I'm not.
I like to understand why.
Well, I guess the value of justice, meaning that everyone is served well and that no one, wherever they live, is harmed. I don't it's hard for me to imagine that anybody in this room doesn't care about justice.
I don't think there's any reason to insert left political terms into a proclamation like this. We could say health, we could say a million other things without making it, I mean, we all know what that is.
I'm sorry, I
But
disagree.
environmental justice is not, it is not in the proclamation. Okay.
It's going to be used to put the
It's
proclamation
a
out.
topic that the EPA is suggesting that there are highlights about. So a chemical plant built near a neighborhood that is poor versus one that's rich is an example of lack of environmental justice. It's harming people because of their status.
Absolutely not.
No,
Absolutely not. That term does not need to be in a proclamation.
agreed.
Let me.
Not in the proclamation.
If I might, Mr. Zulaga, and then Mr. Donaldson, go ahead.
The proclamation is assuming that we're going to roll out with the daily topics. And I am completely opposed to the daily topic focusing on environmental justice as awareness.
And thank you, Mr. Donaldson. You have your mic on. Maybe you had nothing to, but go ahead.
No, whenever the point comes, I would move that we choose a different topic for Thursday rather than environmental justice. One that we think maybe is PPACG specific for that day. And I think we would all support the proclamation if this isn't the topic on Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. And yes, Councilwoman Yolanda Avila, you have your hand up. Please proceed.
Thank you. And I totally agree with Nancy. We're getting caught up on justice. This is the word that the government uses. It's used throughout. And to say, it's like not wanting to put social security because it has social in it, or social determinants of health, making it political. Justice is not political. If you look at the Pledge of Allegiance, it's justice for all. And why does justice all of a sudden become an issue? It becomes an issue because of the gap in what happens with people in lower income areas, like the Drake plant, the coal plant. It's MLK, it divided a neighborhood. It destroyed a neighborhood in my district. And so I do not see why you're making it political when we're just, it's embedded in the conversation and in documents. And it's important to have the justice in there. Are we going to take it out of the Pledge of Allegiance now?
To compare the Pledge of Allegiance to putting that into a proclamation for air quality is not the same thing. We all know that the term environmental justice is political, and it says daily topics Thursday, environmental justice and air quality. Again, we can insert any other term. So I don't understand why PPACG would take a political stance on something so important and automatically alienate those of us who don't feel like environmental justice is not political, because it certainly is.
And then if I might, thank you. There's a lot of sensitivity to this word, and what I would like to do, and there's others that want to speak, and I'll give everybody an opportunity to speak, but what I would like to express to some folks that feels very strongly about the use of the word environmental justice, I just want you all to know that term is being used to attack members of a particular party. It is immensely political to some members of a particular political party, and the very use of the word means you oppose that party. The very use of that word means you oppose that party.
Mr. Chair, I would like to insert at this point that members of the board, please respect the decorum in this group and wait to be identified.
I'm unable to hear the speaker, so a lot of you that are there need to speak in the mic.
That's what I'm asking for. Thank you. Wait to be acknowledged by the chair and not make comments that are not during your time where you're being acknowledged.
I appreciate the mayor's comments, and I do ask for that decorum. I appreciate that. I know that Ms. Hickey, you were interested in speaking for a minute, and then we'll also recognize everybody else that has their hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lisa Torman Hickey, Transportation Commissioner again. I encourage you to take the language out if it's a concern, and you focus rather on the intent, which is education about the impacts on different areas of the region and different demographic impacts of the transportation system. And so perhaps, and probably the built environment itself, and so perhaps use words like transit or integrated transportation or something like that instead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And before I recognize anybody else here in the room, I do see, and I might not be able to read the name very well because it's small, but I think it's Paul, and he is recommending a term called environmental awareness. I just want to bring forward the possibility of, I think we go a long way towards having everybody support what we're doing here by simply changing a particular word. There's really, I will also make the sense that, and I can tell you this is true for myself in particular, as far as making sure that everybody gets an opportunity to live in environments that are clean. And to the extent that if there's been any problems with that about particular regions, communities, little enclaves of cities or whatever, where that has somehow been abused or ignored, I can assure you that myself and many people that I know and work with oppose that and want everybody to have equal opportunities to live in clean environments. So it is not that point that is at issue here. It is that particular term that is at issue here. So yes, Jessica, please. And then I think if there was did anybody else have any hand raised? Okay, so Commissioner Williams and Commissioner Stone next. Please, Jessica.
I do just want to let everyone know as staff, we have definitely heard your concerns. When we do these, we do not necessarily use the terms. So an example that comes to mind as we've discussed this is, rather than saying today is Environmental Justice Day, I would say it's Air Quality Awareness Week. Did you see what the city of Colorado Springs has progressed with their Drake power plant? We don't necessarily use the terminology. We use the sentiment behind it, which is just, how does our built environment impact air quality? So that's it. For those with a great concern about our terminology, we are not going to use that phrasing because we're hearing the board has such a concern about it. So we would have no objection to making sure we are not using that language, and we just have no control over what the EPA does.
Yes, and I agree. We have no control over what others may do, but we can control over what terms we use. And we have Commissioner Williams, Commissioner Stone, and then Commissioner Bremer online all have their hands raised. So Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, I'm content with Jessica's explanation here. I think that we would want to move towards even this environmental and air quality awareness issue. I do agree, however, that, like when the I-70 went through and my son was living just north of it and you had to smell that dog plant every day. I think that it was a decision made, I'm sure, long ago, more than 20 years, but I don't know when that I-70 first went through, but there are areas that do tend to have more manufacturing in them. And let's face it, some of us would prefer to live out in the country. I remember we had a county planning issue involving just putting up a simple concrete stack plant out off of the Stapleton Road way out east, or Callahan Highway, and that caused quite an uproar amongst the community, even though it was what I thought was a well-designed picture, and they'd done a lot of mitigation on the views and stuff. So I think that finding a way to I'm satisfied with Jessica's answer that it will be about environmental awareness and air quality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Stone.
I mean, I think really what this is getting at, and I agree, I don't like the term environmental justice because it politicizes something that I believe everybody in this person already agrees on, is that there are disproportional impacts of development and manufacturing and heavy industrial uses of land. And it is disproportional. And it's disproportional to those who live in those areas. And if the focus of this is going to be on the disproportional impacts of industrialization, transportation on communities, isn't that what we're really talking about? So I agree that, that sometimes these terms get put forth by the federal government in ways, and even the state government in ways that tend to divide us. I don't think this is a divisive issue. I think again, it's an issue we all agree on. And I think if we just look at, again, the disproportional impacts of industrialization, transportation on communities, that's kind of what we're talking about, in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Stone and Commissioner Bremer.
Yes, I'm grateful for this debate, but and I'm okay with changing some words. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at the documentation that says action requested, information only. So there is a proclamation for us to pass, and Josco, from my understanding, was offering information about kind of a communications plan. And so I think I'd like to focus on what the actions of this board are, and specifically ask Jessica if we are passing this proclamation, in which I don't see the words that we're arguing about, or if I'm just not understanding what's being requested of us today to begin with.
Okay, before I recognize anybody else here in the room, I just want to make sure thank you, Commissioner Bremer. I want to make sure that we are not missing anybody online, and I don't see any of their hands raised, but if there is anybody else that wishes to speak online, please just go ahead and chime in because we might not see your hand raised. All right, hearing none there, I think we have a few more on the floor here. I'd like to go ahead and recognize Darcy. Go ahead, and then we'll recognize
Thank you.
Nancy.
I understand that we are all in agreement on this and that the actual proclamation doesn't have that language, which I definitely appreciate. I would also ask that moving forward, we do have to remember that this is public information. So while it's not on the proclamation, it does speak to PPFC and our board members and everybody who's here today. If we use that language, even in agendas and information such as this. So moving forward, I would just ask that we look at even the language that we're using, whether it's in a proclamation or not, because Joe Public reading this agenda on the outside has no idea that we're all in agreement on the actual issue. He could see the language and say this is inflammatory and PPFC is using political language.
Yes, thank you. And I think I had another hand, Councilwoman Hendrim, I think you had your hand raised as well.
Well, I appreciate the conversation as well, and support Commissioner Bremer and Commissioner Stone's and Commissioner Williams' comments. If taking out environmental justice is going to make people happy, great. I agree with you that we don't have a disagreement about the principle here. I would invite us all to ask, why do we get so wrapped up about words? And that goes for all sides, left, right, center. It's just fascinating to me. And so I hope we can all take a deep breath, find our common ground, and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate those great words. So I guess for the PPACG staff, you've witnessed something pretty interesting here. I ask that you be a little sensitive to use of certain words. I mean, to Councilwoman Hendrim's point, right? Gosh darn it, it is just a couple of words. However, I can tell you there is a lot of there's a lot of intensity about that word, and it's all political. And I think very much, right, we don't, my sense of it is we don't want to harm what we want to do in this board and what we want PPACG to do. simply because we use a couple of words and we anger a lot of people as a result. And to, I think, the comments made by practically everybody that has spoken from the point of view of wanting to make sure that that everybody in our community gets to live in a clean environment. Whatever has happened in the past, whatever might have been right or wrong, this board, I believe, is committed to that. And we can work on those kinds of issues, and especially work on those issues in communities that maybe have not benefited from that so much. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all, and I believe this board would continue to support that. I do see heads shaking up and down on that particular point. I think Mr. Zulaga, you had your hand raised, or was there someone else? And then we should proceed with the vote.
My hand is raised for the purpose of a motion to
Oh.
approve, unless you want to comment.
One last comment. then.
Okay.
Okay.
My last comment is, I would suggest that if you look at this as being something that's community awareness, that Thursday could focus on what the individual can do to contribute to air quality, instead of looking at it like the injustice upon or justice upon. It's like, look at what the individual could do: driving their car, public transportation, riding a bicycle, whatever. So that would be my sense of how it would also make this more applicable to people's personal life.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment, and that probably could be very helpful as far as how we communicate. I do see that we still have some more folks that wish to make some comments, but let's make sure everybody gets their opportunity before we vote, because that's very important. Mayor, please proceed.
I would like to suggest for Thursday be our Colorado environment and air quality, and get people to focus on what our differences in Colorado, and why we are struggling so much with this issue, because we have a unique some geographical things here, where you have the mountains, you have the air, the quality that kind of gets stuck against them. What can you do to for our Colorado area? So that'd be my suggestion. Make it more of a local look at what we're doing, what you can do locally.
Thank you for comments. And I see that Andy and Jessica are writing notes furiously, which is excellent, because that'll be some considerations about our messaging going forward. I still see, let's see, Mr. Gardine, I think I saw your hand raised.
Yes, I totally agree, man, with Mayor Thompson. I think that is a very good way to describe it. And everybody would actually go and feel like they won't participate in it. I think it'd be a good thing.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. And did I have, yes, okay, Councilwoman Hendrim.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond, Mr. Zulaga, to your point about what can individuals do? Super important. I think the reality is that we're dealing with the tensions of individual responsibility and collective responsibility. And we are the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. So there's individual and there's the collective. They're both important. I don't know that you were suggesting singling out individual responsibility, but I just wanted to, as I heard that, it reminded me of that. Fundamentally, those are a lot of the tensions I think that we deal with in the values in which how we're leading in government, is what is individual responsibility and what is the collective responsibility. And we have to have them both. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And to that point, and I appreciate all the comments that were made. I will make the point, we are here. We are a public agency, PPACG. So we are working on both, asking citizens to be responsible for their own actions. And we also have public agencies that work together as a team. So I believe that we are working on trying to achieve that balance between public response and private response. And maybe we can recognize as a board that both of those are important in the overall actions that we take. I think with that in mind, I think, are we ready to, oh, yes.
If I could just ask a question, Mr. Chair. When we vote, we're going to vote, hey, I'm in support of supporting this proclamation. I'll vote for it. On this, our page 1 of our packet, it says the EPA selects a different topic to highlight on each day. Thursday is the one we're discussing. Is the PPACG staff going to replace the EPA's talking point for that day with what Mayor Thompson has recommended? Is that what we're voting on? Is that part of what we're voting on?
Well, I think we're voting on here's my sense of it, and then we can have a further conversation and make sure that it is set right. Before we go there, I do see a comment here, and I can't, oh, I think it is from Councilwoman Avila. Says, I would really appreciate if those of you in the boardroom talk into your mic. She is having a little trouble hearing everybody speaking. So if everybody could just be sensitive to that, so that those that are online can hear the entire conversation, I would appreciate that.
I think it helps if you lean forward and speak
Yeah.
into it.
So to Councilman Donaldson's comments, I'll just ask the PPACG staff maybe to respond to that question.
I'll take a stab, and then Jessica, if you want to chime in. I think we're getting pretty clear direction today, and I hope you trust our judgment as far as what.
Andy, I'm not able to hear you.
Okay, I got a little bit closer. There we go. We'll give this a
Everyone not
shot.
speaking could turn their mics off. I think it really helps.
Yeah, we have too many mics on maybe. Okay, so I think we got pretty clear direction today. We were, I don't think, intending to use the EPA guidance they put out as a pure guide. I think we were going to tweak it to meet our local regional needs. And I hope what we roll out is consistent with what the board is comfortable with. I did hear 3 suggestions to replace the Thursday theme with, which I thought were all really good, focusing on Colorado state local dynamics that are different than other communities. I think that's a great idea. Also about what individuals can do, because that is an important part of the message about using transit and using your bike to get to work and things like that. I think letting individual households know what they can do to be part of the solution, I think that's really important as well. And then also heard Commissioner Stone mention, talk about the disproportional impact on certain communities because of different decisions that have been made. I think that is important as well. So I don't know exactly how we would weave that in, but I heard 3 good suggestions there to kind of replace that Thursday theme. But I don't know, like I said, that we don't need to follow the exact EPA guidance. For instance, I'm not sure that Wednesday's theme is going to give us a whole lot of traction around citizen science and sensors necessarily. So using that as a guide, using today's discussion to give us marching orders, Jessica and I. But anything else?
Just to answer the question, we're asking for approval of the proclamation, and then staff will take all of this discussion as our guidance on how we choose to promote Air Quality Awareness Week. So we don't need a separate motion for that, because you've given us very good and very clear guidance that you'd like us to avoid that language.
I appreciate that. And I believe the staff will do what's appropriate here, specifically to the page 48. Man, I kept looking on that page trying to find environmental justice. I finally just found the word. And I think, because that is just simply a title, right? When you're in a very short phrase like that, I think environmental awareness works great for me. I would imagine that others might be willing to accept that as well. And then whatever is in the narrative, you've mentioned these 3 things that I think are good additions. Yes, trustee.
Trustee Havener here, Palmer Lake. Stan, something you just said, I completely respect you. I understand what you're saying, but something you just said about it just being a title, no, it's not. It's a slippery slope, and we need to take a stand on it.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. For this board, I am hopeful that we can all see the sensitivity of this word that, well, I'll just leave it at that. Okay. But I do believe that the staff has heard some of the concerns from the board, which is not a universal concern, but certainly several of us have concerns about it. And we are voting on the proclamation itself. And I don't think we have a motion yet. And Mr. Zulaga, go ahead.
I was going to make that motion. I move that we approve the proclamation of Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board of Directors in support of Air Quality Awareness Week, May 2nd to the 6th, 2022, with the understanding that our staff is very sensitive to this past discussion.
Second, Commissioner Williams.
All right, thank you. There's been a motion and a second. At the risk of a longer conversation, I always have to ask, does anybody have any additional comments or questions about this motion? All right, and I do see one last comment from Commissioner Bremer. It was before the motion was made. Hopefully everybody can read it. I won't reiterate it here, but I can read the words. Thank you, Commissioner Bremer, for those comments. All right, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed?
Yes, opposed.
Okay, we have 2 opposed. And please make sure that the record reflects that. Does the staff need to know who, you got them? Okay, great. Thank you very much. And let us move on now to item 5D.
Okay, Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communications Manager, again here for your legislative session update. There are 4 major points I'm going to bring up today. During the past month, the Legislative Committee did work out a more formal process for active engagement on legislation that we strongly support or oppose. That goal was just to ensure that our work's as impactful as possible for the Legislative Committee, staff, and board members who wish to engage. The process that we established and some of those tips were all included in the packet. So did anybody have any questions about that?
Are there any questions on any of the items proposed here by the Legislative Committee?
So I do have one thing to add that I don't think was in our agenda. That's part of this legislative session update. On April 12th, so just yesterday, we received an email from the National Association of Regional Councils regarding funding for the Older Americans Act. They're looking at facing funding that is not changing and seeing at the same time declining emergency funds that they were given in the past. Those fund levels are not meeting the growing needs of older adults and the support they need. So they're encouraging our local representatives, state senators and state representatives to sign a funding letter calling for increases in Older Americans Act funding for the year. So I don't know if that's something that the Legislative Committee would like to look at and see if that's something we'd like to support. It doesn't, those signatures for the sign on aren't due until Friday, April 22nd. So there's some time for the committee to look at that.
As a co-chair, I would like to say that that's something that can wait till the Monday meeting that we can discuss there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Are there any comments on this last comment that Jessica has mentioned and also what the mayor has mentioned? It does seem to me appropriate that the Legislative Committee take that up and deliberate on it before we bring that to the broader board. And can I confirm that the Legislative Committee has not deliberated over that yet? Is that correct?
Correct. We just got it yesterday.
Okay, so that seems to make sense to me, what the mayor is recommending. And are there any other comments on that? Yes, Trustee Schoening.
Your microphone's not on.
Thank you so much. This may be better to discuss at some other time. So if it is, feel free to let me know. My concern was on a particular bill, which is Senate Bill 180. Would that be better to discuss at another time?
Oh, yeah, I don't see it on this list. Is Senate Bill 180?
It came 2 days ago in an email.
Yes,
So
Senate Bill 180 is one that we, before we do our vote, we were asked to have discussion on Senate Bill 180, which is programs to reduce ozone through increased transit. Our proposed position was monitor, but continue to stay actively informed on the bill. This is one of those bills that, as it's written right now, not bad, has the potential to be changed. So we wanted to stay very closely engaged on it. And we actually did receive a request to consider supporting it, considering PPACG's ozone amendments or ozone measurements.
Okay.
So we were asked to have.
So that
discussion on
has not been addressed
Correct,
by the
because it just
Legislative
came out on
Committee either,
Tuesday.
right?
It's not been discussed for the legislative group because that's why it's not on this. So all we're being asked to vote on today is the bills that are actually printed here.
okay,
Right.
thank you.
And to be fair to this point, right? I mean, we have that Legislative Committee to deliberate on this and make recommendations to this board. And I do feel it's important, unless we're in some kind of urgent time frame issue, that we always give that Legislative Committee an opportunity to deliberate on these things. So I appreciate the comment, and maybe that is also then can be specifically a topic for Monday. Okay, and did I see another hand raised? Yes, Mr. Gardine.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardine, Callahan. The emergency meeting of last Monday, what transpired with that letter?
Oh, yes, please. Are you referring to the letter of opposition that we voted on Monday with regard to collective bargaining?
Collective bargaining, yes.
Yes, that would be good. Let's well, I'll tell you what, let's specifically discuss that topic, but let's address the topic at hand right now, which is a vote on these items. And then let's specifically come back to that and make sure the staff presents the outcome of that meeting to all of the members here.
Sorry, can I ask one more question?
Yes, please.
On Senate Bill 159, the last email that I got said monitor, have Dan provide information when the fiscal note's available. I thought that we had the fiscal, the fiscal note's up on that one. And it's a lot.
Okay. So I guess the question, the question is, now that has come and there's a fiscal note, but I don't know that, again, the legislative committee has had an opportunity to deliberate on that fiscal note. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the legislative committee on Monday will put this under our reconsider list, and the board will receive on Monday afternoon, as you always do, the proposed positions, so that if there are any changes to the current position, if there are objections, support. So because that fiscal note the committee has not yet reviewed it in that line, we are asking for the board to vote to continue to monitor the bill until the legislative committee has reviewed it again and potentially changes that recommendation.
And I encourage everybody to really be watching your emails if this is a passion of yours, because as the legislative list has 29 days left or something, 28. Okay. The next 28 days are going to be crazy, and it has been known for the legislative committee to start meeting twice a week and sometimes as needed. And some of those decisions need to come pretty quickly. We do ask for a 24-hour turnaround on your answers, and the faster you can get those answers to us, the more guidance we have. So,
and I think another great point to make, and you can correct me if I'm saying this incorrectly, but since we will have to deliberate over some of these pieces of proposed legislation very, very quickly, the legislative committee will be making a recommendation, sending it to the board. And if they hear nothing from you, then they will assume that you have accepted the recommended position. So if you have an objection, you've got to voice it within that 24-hour window, or you will miss your window. The importance of that is it does mean please pay attention to those coming from the PPACG for the recommendations, because you've got an objection, you've got to say it at that point. Otherwise, you'll miss your opportunity. So I think that's important to make sure that that's clear for everybody. Oh, yes, Mr. Elsner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The other thing is, if you are really passionate about any of these things, please sign up to testify. Remote testimony is almost easy. It works really well. You've got 3 minutes, so make sure you're well organized when you want to start talking. But over the last couple of weeks, I have done a lot of testimony, some of it down at the Capitol. One of them is on one of the bills that we are in support of, which is moving along quite nicely. And at this point, I want to shout out to Representative Exum, who was tossed onto the House Ag Committee on Monday. I don't think he'd ever been on the Ag Committee, for a vote on the firefighting water pond bill. And he listened intently and voted in the right direction. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Elsner, for that. And there was another note from one of our members online. And it's just, I have to imagine when you're online, it is difficult to always hear what is being said and also to know who is saying it. So the request is just please identify yourself. For us in the room here, it might look a little silly, but it's for the benefit of those that are online. And I guess I'll start with that. This comment was from Commissioner Stan. Thank you. Okay. All right. Let's see, where are we? We still, we don't have a motion yet, do we? No. All right. Are there any last remaining questions with regard to those items that are listed on item agenda 5D? All right. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the
5D.
Thank you.
5D. Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner Holly Williams, second.
All right. That's been moved and
And that
seconded.
was Nancy Hendrim moving. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you very much. Any last comments or questions from anybody? And I'm looking online as well to see if there's anybody with a hand raised or hand up. I don't see anything online. All right. And I don't see any other requests to discuss here in the room. So let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? All right. Hearing none, that passes. And that was the last action item. And
May
now
I
we.
give a quick update on
Oh,
that
yeah, I'm
collective
sorry. My
bargaining bill?
apologies. That is correct. I appreciate your refreshing my memory of that. Let's get that update about the vote that we took on Monday.
Just a super quick update. At the special board meeting on Monday, the board did vote to support that letter of opposition. We did get it signed and submitted, and then we actually asked our lobbyist for an update just this morning. He talked with the union guys last night, and there's nothing new. They're still not sure they have the votes, so they're still not introducing it. So part of our reason that we wanted to move on that letter so quickly is they're planning on not introducing the bill until they're pretty positive they've got the votes so that it'll move very quickly. So our letter of opposition was very well timed, and the bill continues to not be introduced. So for good updates.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gardine, for asking for an update, and thank you, Jessica, for providing that. Yes,
On that
please.
comment, I believe the county commissioners meeting the other day, this is Mayor Thompson. I believe at your county commissioners meeting the other day, your liaison said just to implement this bill for the county would be like $6 million in staff time, just to make sure it's done correctly. So this is a significant amount of time.
So actually, since it's not introduced, it's hard to know exactly what it would or would not do, but the number is more like 30 million for El Paso County.
6 million to implement it the first year, and then as it went through the various departments, it would increase,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Commissioner Williams?
And I do have just a short statement on what it would cost the county. Collective bargaining will result in cutting our services to our citizens for the same cost. Our conservative estimate is $25 million. The county could fill 5.6 million potholes, chip seal 225 miles of road, overlay 82 miles of road, hire 251 new deputy sheriffs, desperately needed in some areas, or hire 332 new Department of Human Services employees. So that's just a little snapshot of how damaging this would be to a very tight county budget already.
Thank you, Commissioner Stone.
Yeah, and just perspective from a small county, looking at the spreadsheet that our chief finance officer put together, and they're estimating an impact to Teller County of about $3.8 million, which is 10% of our general fund. And obviously for those who are in government, you know that our largest investment is in people. And with we're looking at how to provide even a marginal close level of services with 10% fewer people is a bar too high to cross. So anyway, that's the impact on a small county. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, you know, not to belabor the point on this, but another point that I am interested in making is that any public agency in counties today can unionize if they wish to do so. It's a permissive environment. If they have an interest in doing it, it can be done today. So, you know, one of the elements of this bill, again, it's not introduced, so we don't know entirely everything that it would do, but it is our understanding that it would force unionization. It would be mandated, and there would be no option unless you want to violate Colorado law. So, I just want to make the point that I don't know if there's many counties, but I think there's one or two in Colorado that have unionized. So there's opportunities to unionize today. And from my point of view, I see no reason for this legislation. All right.
The mayor of Denver, when I was at a CML meeting, says that the citizens of Denver have turned down unionizing the city 5 times. And that was their choice as the citizens to have.
Thank you for that point, Mr. Gardine.
I guess it didn't come on. I'm really concerned then that I want the people to have to be really comfortable by calling 911 and someone being there. Okay, when people need help, they need help. And we right now are working and striving hard to take care of our communities and our counties. And I think this will really be a negative impact.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so we've had an update. We did vote to oppose. We have that letter in the Capitol. I appreciate everybody's indulgence on the emergency meeting. It sounds like, at least in an indirect way, if not in a direct way, we are helping to have an influence in Denver with regard to how we voted on that particular item. So thank you, everybody. I believe if everybody is willing, let's go ahead and proceed then. I think that topic is completed. Let's proceed to the reports. And we start with item 6A. And let's see, who do we have online, Andy? That is. Okay, Colonel Jung, I believe you are online and you represent Air Force Academy. So please proceed with installation report.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. I don't have too much to report today. There is certainly a lot of prep work being done for graduation, but it's still very much in the planning and scheduling phase. So I hope to have a better update for you about graduation at next month's meeting. I do have one update for you, Mr. Chair. You asked me last month if the speaker had been confirmed, and I was hoping to have an update for you today, but that's still up in the air. I'm told that the invitation has been sent, but we are awaiting confirmation. So thank you for the chance to participate today, and pending any questions, that's all I have for you, Safa.
All right, are there any questions for the Colonel? And thank you for your direct response to my question. I think I am signed up to attend the graduation, and I am looking forward to it. It'll be a great day for those cadets. All right, is there anybody else online from any of the other military? Thank you. Mr. Arnold, I believe you are here for Peterson and Schriever. Or maybe it's Mr. Popert. Okay.
So this is Mr. Arnold. I'm here. Just took me a minute to unmute, so my apologies. Not a lot to update today, but did want to provide a couple updates. In this forum, last time I briefed that we would soon be changing the name of the garrison from Peterson Schriever Garrison to Space Base Delta One. That still obviously has not happened. Again, it should be transparent to the folks in the community of the new name change. Basically, the package is at the Pentagon with the air staff to approve the name change, but it's stalled with the general counsel up there with the lawyers looking at it. We're hoping to make the name change sometime in mid-May is our hope, and then we'll have a small ceremony without a lot of pomp and circumstance, since we've gone through about 3 names in the last few years, and hopefully this will be the final name change for a long time, and we'll quit confusing the community. One other quick update, not to spook the herd, but just kind of an interesting development. Here at Peterson and Schriever, we've been doing great, Shine Mountain as well. Lately with regards to COVID positives, we've gone long extended periods without any. Then all of a sudden yesterday we had 10 in one day. So our medical folks are scrambling, trying to figure out exactly what's happening there. But kind of an interesting development. We have kind of loosened up on a lot of the protocols here, so we don't know if that's contributed to it, but thought it was an interesting data point. And then the last update, have been cleared to hire a person that will actually be on my staff here at Peterson as part of the Garrison staff agencies, to actually be our public-private partnership lead. which will really increase our ability to work closely with the community on everything from intergovernment service agreements to other things. We've lagged behind. Fort Carson has been well out ahead of us on this, and the Air Force Academy created a position, I think, last year that's making a difference with them. So kind of excited to get somebody hired to bring them in here and increase our ability to work with the community. That is all I have for updates today, unless anybody has any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Arnold. And Councilman Donaldson, you've got a comment or question?
Yeah, two questions for you, Mr. Arnold. One is the 10 folks who tested positive, did any of them have symptoms?
So yeah, so kind of a mixed bag, but all of them actually came in because they were symptomatic, from my understanding. And again, the medical folks are still trying to figure out what's going on here and see if there's any links. But we've kind of cut back on our testing to just a couple days a week. And most of the folks that we're testing are because they're symptomatic or they're prepping for travel. And I don't have the breakout, but I do know that I think at least a majority of them, I think, were symptomatic.
Okay, so some were and some weren't. And then secondly,
my understanding.
So Peterson is no longer going to be Peterson. It'll be Space Base Delta One.
So, right, and that's where we confuse the community. So Peterson Space Force Base will still be Peterson Space Force Base.
Okay.
Schriever Space Force Base will still be Schriever Space Force Base, and Cheyenne Mountain will be Cheyenne Mountain Space Force Station. But the organization that provides the host organization for Peterson and Schriever is currently called Peterson Schriever Garrison, which was the old 21st Space Wing at Peterson, 50th Space Wing at Schriever combined to create the Peterson Schriever Garrison. That will now be renamed to Space Base Delta One to be consistent with the operational organizations in the Space Force.
Okay, so it won't really impact people driving up to the gate or what we hear on the news. They're still going to report. They're still going to refer to Peterson Space Base.
Yes, sir. Exactly. Right. Yeah. So to the community, it should be fairly transparent, unless it's somebody who's out here doing business with us on a regular basis. But to the community in general, it should be fairly transparent.
Thank you.
And
Yes,
thank you, Mr. Arnold, for that clarification. I actually appreciate it because that explanation's cleared it up in my mind as well. Obviously, and with my 28 years in the Air Force, we were talking about air base wings all the time. And with Space Force, your wing equivalents are called deltas, and therefore,
yes, sir. So,
yeah, please go ahead.
No, sir. To your point, and with your experience, so Space Base Delta One would be the equivalent of an air base wing. That's exactly what it is.
Exactly. Yep, that was the point I was going to make as well. So Delta One is a wing equivalent when you're trying to compare how it is compared to the Air Force. And that makes sense. So the 21st Space Wing, which was the support wing for the base, is now going to be, assuming it's approved, will be called Delta One. And
yes,
that's making sense to me. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
No, that's great insight. I appreciate that. That's helpful. Any other questions for Mr. Arnold? All right. Are there any other representatives from any of our military bases? And I don't know that there are. I think we're good. Okay, I think we're good then. Let us go then to item 6H, the CDOT monthly update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Richard Zamora with CDOT. I'm going to cover a few things before I turn it over to Shane Ferguson to talk about some specific project updates. So first, if everybody recalls, last month we had a pretty in-depth conversation around transit funding as part of the 10-year plan, and as alluded to by John Leosados even earlier this morning. There was a proposal to take maintenance and operations for faster or for bus staying off the top out of the 10-year portion of the transit plan. And that was going to result in roughly about a 40 to 50% cut in terms of available dollars for local entities to use for transit. Based upon a lot of conversation at the STAC meeting last month, CDOT has gone back to the drawing board, and we've identified an alternative that has a minimal to zero impact potentially on the available funding in order to cover that maintenance and operations costs. So what we're currently proposing to do, and I think is going to be discussed at STAC later on this week on Friday, is to use some additional FTA dollars and also the state portion of the MMOF funding to actually cover that gap. So hopefully that would have a minimal to zero impact on what happens with transit availability, transit funding availability as part of the 10-year plan. So some more discussion about that, as John indicated, we're going to have to come back to you and all of our planning partners with regard to the updates to the 10-year transit plan once that's been finalized. So I think that's a little bit of good news. Hopefully that'll move through the process. Another topic of hot conversation, and it was talked about here in terms of ozone, but greenhouse gas emissions. I think everybody's well aware that CDOT and the Transportation Commission have adopted rules related to greenhouse gas. They're in the process of developing the policies and procedures in order to implement those rules. There was a lot of discussion last month at STAC as well as whether or not that should be a policy directive or procedural directive. From a CDOT perspective, the difference is a procedural directive, it's controlled by staff and the executive director, whereas a policy directive actually involves the Transportation Commission and them adopting formal policies. So I think where we've ended up through discussion at the Transportation Commission last month is going to be a policy directive. So the Transportation Commission will have a lot of direct input into what that looks like, and considering the concerns that were brought up at STAC from various elected officials going forward. So, I think the timeline is to try to have those things adopted next month. So we'll have a lot more information coming out of this, I believe, this month from Transportation Commission, which is next week.
I don't mean to interrupt, but on that particular point, Andy, I don't necessarily have clarity in my mind about what, those positions are. And depending on what they are, they could be, have an impact on what's going on here locally. So have we had an opportunity to provide input? Maybe there hasn't been an opportunity to provide input. So, where are we on that? And maybe, go ahead.
John is repositioning to get up, and while you're coming up, I don't know that there's been. I think the conversations have happened through STAC and then also through the sub working groups that John's been involved with and meets with on a weekly basis. But we've been consistently conveying the concerns that we've had. Last year our comments were centered around the rulemaking that became official and was adopted in December. So now it's entered into a newer phase where I think CDOT's looking at how to operationalize the rules and digging into the details now with the different work groups. John?
Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Directors, I don't have that much to add, but yes, as the CDOT Transportation Commission adopted the rule in, I believe, December, we moved into these policies and procedures. And as Rich has indicated, it went from sort of being two separate documents, one that would be sort of the Transportation Commission would control sort of the overall, but then the CDOT director would have the ability to make some changes. And at the last Transportation Commission, meeting, the Transportation Commission said, no, we're going to keep control of all of this. Over the last few months, originally there were 3 different groups, and I was fortunate enough, and that was sarcasm, by the way, just in case I didn't hit that hard enough, to be on all 3 of those groups. So representing you, some of them are rather technical in nature, but again, we keep on trying to sort of bring a philosophy and position towards some of those issues. So myself and Will Mast have attended all of those meetings. There is within SB 260, the creation of the IAC, the interagency consultation team, I think, that's what IAC stands for. Andy was given the opportunity to be the representative, and he gave that to me. So I'm sorry, but yeah. So anyway, so I am the representative for the region on that as well. So we are engaged in all of the discussions. Sometimes we are but one voice of the 5 NPOs, but for the most part, we try to coordinate with the other NPOs, especially since DRCOG and North Front Range and CDOT will all have to come into compliance by October of this year. So to some extent, we're waiting to see how these rules get implemented with those folks. And then as we sort of look at the impact of the solution to those guinea pigs, we can come up with maybe some better solutions and some better approaches moving forward. So.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Williams, you had your hand raised.
Well, that was a way more technical answer I was going to give. I think we have about a 25-page slide presentation at STAC on Friday about the greenhouse gas policy directive. So, but his answer was way more technical than mine. So I'll let John's answer stand.
Great. Maybe just in the interest of proceeding forward, maybe if we could ask the PPACG staff to maybe send that directive to the board members, whatever that is that they've published. If you've done it already, and maybe I've just missed it.
The stack slides, perhaps?
Yeah, we could send the
Yeah.
stack slides. We can send those. Just so you know, those are still a work in progress. As far as what the finished is, and again, it's in the stack packet. So if you've got it right there, you can give us the right thing. But I think it's a discussion here in April, and it goes to Transportation Commission next month in May. So in May, it's a done deal. We'll know exactly what we're dealing with. So we can send you the stack packet now. In fact, I'll make sure I get that to Jess, and Jess will send that out. But as far as when you read that,
A work in progress.
it's a work in progress, and know that the final version will come out next month, and that's the one we'll have to live with. And again, we do have questions about that.
Okay.
So hopefully it will change.
Thank you very much. I didn't mean to interrupt, but please proceed with the CDOT update.
No, and I'll just add on to the end of that too, even though, a policy is adopted, policies can change as well. So, based upon as we learn stuff, it is going to be a little bit of a fluid situation going forward. So the commission has freedom to modify things as we learn more. So
thank you.
Just a couple other quick things I wanted to mention, with springtime coming on us, and, that usually means cone zones. So this time of year, this particular week happens to be National Work Zone Awareness Week. The theme for this year nationally is work zones are assigned to slow down. So CDOT is observing National Work Zone Awareness Week. We've had multiple events. We have a statewide event this afternoon. Region 2 is also hosting our statewide event, or actually our regional event this afternoon as well. And as part of that, we also try to recognize and remember the folks who have given their lives in the line of duty for CDOT. So people have actually been killed in active work zones. So I just ask that everybody, remind your constituents and everybody that, highway work is dangerous work. Those work zones are dangerous for the people working in them, as well as for the drivers, and make sure they pay attention and slow down. The final thing I just wanted to bring to your attention before I turn it over to Shane is, as part of Earth Day is next week, next Friday actually is formally Earth Day. I'm recognizing that, CDOT plays a portion of that in terms of trash along our highways. We're going to be having a big event on actually next Monday, not on observance of actual Earth Day on Friday, just we don't have the time, but actually you're going to probably see a lot of folks out along the highways within Region 2 doing trash collection. So it's not just going to be our maintenance folks. We've asked our engineering staff and everybody who works for CDOT to be part of that event. So likely on Monday, we're going to be working in a couple of shifts with folks along the highways, picking up trash and trying to clean up our environment, as well as sharing information. There's personal responsibility associated with that as well. Your actions help contribute to what you see along the sides of the road. So I'm
Great.
really excited about that event as well.
I'm excited about that too. That's awesome that CDOT is doing that. Always interested in having clean roadways, and so appreciate you're doing that. And also make sure that the CDOT team stays safe.
Yes, sir.
I know
Yep.
you will. Yeah, thank you.
And finally, I'll just turn it over to Shane with some project updates.
Could I ask one question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Rich, were the engineers really pretty excited to find out they get the opportunity to go out and pick up trash on the highway?
Actually, you'd be surprised. We have, over, I think, 150 volunteers right now. It was a volunteer effort. It was highly encouraged by me, of course.
Volunteer. That's great.
But it's a completely volunteer effort, and we have a lot of volunteers who signed up to do it. So
In the Army, we used to get voluntold.
Thank you very
If
much.
they don't know where to go, I can help you out with that, especially after the wind.
All right. Yeah, please.
All right. Good morning. Shane Ferguson with CDOT. We are excited, sir. I'll start off with the MAMSIP project. That's the Military Access and Mobility Safety Improvement Project, which is I-25, State Highway 94, Charter Oaks Ranch Road, and South Academy. Charter Oaks Ranch Road and South Academy are both El Paso County projects that we're partnering with El Paso County to complete. The projects on I-25, Charter Oaks Ranch Road, and State Highway 94 are currently under construction. On the I-25 portion, you'll start to see some traffic shifts come June 2nd, where we will shift the southbound lanes onto the northbound sections. 94 is starting construction in earnest really this come early May. So you'll start seeing more groundbreaking out that direction towards Schriever Air Force Base. And Charter Oaks Ranch Road is definitely under construction currently. The South Academy portion is still under the pre-construction side of the house, and we are continuing to work forward on that project. The Research and Powers project, the interchange construction project, the deck has been poured. We're finishing up just kind of the guardrail and abutments and approach slabs, et cetera. Also looking into the paving sections now on that project. So that's progressing very well. Now I'm going to talk about a few projects that's either under advertisement or getting ready to go under advertisement. The US 24 surface treatment project, which is from Chipeta Park through Woodland Park. We expect to open bids on Thursday this week. So fingers crossed that the bids come in well for that project. The scope of that, again, is a surface treatment project with ADA ramp replacements within Woodland Park. About 14 to 15 ramps that we're replacing on that corridor. The second project that's going to be open, which is next week, is the State Highway 115 safety and pavement reconstruction project. So fingers crossed as well on that project. It's about a $45 million project that starts from Gate 6 on State Highway 115 and goes down to the El Paso County and Fremont County line. Includes pavement reconstruction, safety improvements, and the bridge replacement at Rock Creek Bridge. Another project that we're going to go out for advertisement next week is in Park County. That is the Park County chain-up stations, which include US 285 southbound direction at Kenosha Pass, as well as the State Highway 9 Hoosier Pass going to the west or north direction. That project's to be advertised next week, and we'll open bids about 3 weeks from there. And then one last update, we did open bids on the US 285 and State Highway 9 project about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Those bids came in about over 25% over our budget. We did reject that project, or reject the bids on that project. We're going back to look at our design, see if there's any efficiencies, as well as looking at how to supplement additional funding and budget. We anticipate advertising that project again in this fall, September, October timeframe. So with that, are there any questions for me?
I do see a hand raised for Commissioner Elsner, and then we'll go to Commissioner Stone.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Shane for saying we rejected the project and correcting it to we rejected the bids.
Correct.
That is an important project. I did have some discussions with him on why, and hopefully the next go around we'll be able to have something that'll be within budget.
Great. Thank you for those comments. Commissioner Stone.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shane, we've seen a trend lately of a lot of projects going out, coming in significantly over budget on bids, which causes those bids to be rejected. Are we going to see a lot of these projects coming back, looking for increased funding and possibly moving stuff, off of the 1 to 4 into the 5 to 10, or what are you guys, when you look in your crystal ball, what are we looking at?
So I will say, yes, we are seeing significant increase in price, and I'll turn it over to Rich here in a second on the funding side. But to give you an idea of what we're seeing labor increase by 20%. We're seeing, the cost of fuels being passed on and buried into some of our bids, unit prices. And so that concrete prices for foundations for that project in particular, and 285 and 9 was about 5 times the normal cost. And so that may be a knee-jerk reaction at the time that the bids were open from the contractors. We'll see. But we are going to see significant increase and continue to see those prices passed along to our projects. As far as the funding side, I'll turn it over to Rich to see if you get.
And I was just going to say, we've seen a little bit of a mixed bag even in the past month and a half or so. We've had some projects in some areas, come in about where we expect or just slightly over, typical kind of things. But then again, we've seen some projects come in with concrete prices of 5 times what we were expecting. So, it's kind of a strange market right now. We are trying to adjust our estimates, constantly, and trying to look at that and plan for the future. So, we do have a little bit of flexibility in terms of funding. We typically hold a little bit back. We don't fully program down to the penny in order to cover some of these things. And so we have been able to award some of the jobs where we feel like they're representative of the market and we're not getting gouged. But, by the same token, there's been some projects that are in more remote areas where it feels like, there is some potential gouging going on with some of the pricing. And so some of those, we sit down and evaluate everything, and we look at the item line prices and various other things. Now, trends are happening in order to make decisions of whether to award or not, just to make sure we're protecting the public interest overall.
Thank you. And I think Mayor Thompson, you had some comments as well?
I know I've mentioned this before and I'm going to mention it again just because it's a really, really important topic down in Fountain is the short merge, almost no merge lane going northbound and exit 128 due to the construction. It's dangerous. I know it would be expensive fix. I don't know what to do. I'm not an engineer, but getting on there with those trucks going, we know they're not going 65 in the 65 zone because I saw somebody the other day go fly by me going 85 when the little thing popped up. The monitor, what do you call those things? Where you drive by it and flashes your speed
radar
up.
detector or the signs.
The sign, yeah. So we know they're not doing it, but you know, I've been in the car several times trying to drive to get on, being a passenger trying to get on, see people in front of me try to get on. 6 cars yesterday, complete dead stop on the on-ramp, you know, so it's of great concern.
Yeah, and there are, Shane and his team are constantly looking at the project and ways to improve safety throughout the work zone. I think in that particular location, there are some pretty constraining geometrics. Shane, I don't know if you want to talk through that, but I think we're exploring any and all opportunities to improve safety through the work zone.
Yeah, we've definitely noticed that in that area too. It is constrained. It's pretty tight, as you're aware of, especially where the abutments and the walls and everything are in that location. It's a shorter duration that it's under construction in that area. It's probably throughout the summer and probably the fall. I know the short is relative, correct? But we're constantly incorporating CSP as well as any other enforcement agency just to help try to monitor and control as much as we can those speeds.
In addition to the speed, the merge is, you know, really, really a concern, especially to some people. We're going to have people getting out their motorcycles in the next, few weeks as the weather turns nicer. So.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Elsner, I see a hand up. I don't know if it's just still up from the previous comment or not.
If this was CCI, I would owe you a donut.
There you go. I'll extract that payment sometime in the future from you. So a couple of comments that I have is, first of all, I can tell you the residents down around 115 are really excited about the project you've got going on down there. Just so you know, I get a phone call or an email every week. They're so excited. So do good on that project, because if it doesn't go well, I'm sure I'll be getting different kinds of comments. But I know that you'll do good. And then you did mention the project, I think it was resurfacing on 24 between Cascade and Woodland Park. It's my understanding that it was in fact resurfaced, I think 3 years ago, up to the up on the El Paso County side. But that it has not been yet resurfaced on the Teller. So is it being resurfaced from Cascade, meaning like the county line to Woodland Park, or what
Park,
exactly?
Yeah, it's Peter Park area. I mean, we're continuing on with that surface treatment. I'd have to, the exact geographic boundary.
You're
We're not-
continuing the surface
That's
treatment.
correct.
Okay,
We're not-
great.
We're
Yeah.
not redoing anything we just did 2 years ago.
Okay, great. Yeah, that'll be wonderful, because it is a very, very noticeable when you're driving up and down that road where it was resurfaced 3 years ago and where it wasn't. So you're continuing that resurfacing up to Woodland Park. That'll be great.
Through Woodland Park.
Okay, great. And I do want to just mention also, I can speak for myself, but I think perhaps also speak for this board. I just want to continue to thank CDOT for the great work you're doing in our community here, because there are a lot of projects going on and we are grateful for that. So despite our conversations, despite the challenges we have, I just want to continue to express our appreciation to CDOT for all that work. Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, let's move on to item I, and that's the STAC meeting update.
So the nice thing in following CDOT is usually the stack questions are answered. So the big debate last month, thank you, Commissioner Stone, for attending, was obviously on the cut to bus services, especially in the rural areas, by 40 to 50%. And so it's great to see that they've found another way to fund that. Other than that, there was some discussion on greenhouse gas emissions and a discussion on how the state legislative bills is working, as well as the state budget is getting approved for CDOT that includes additional funds for revitalizing main streets, multimodal transportation and mitigation option fund, Burnham Yard, which I believe is in Denver. Am I right about Burnham Yard? Okay. And impaired driving pass-through dollars. So those were the things that they're pursuing at the state level. And this month, of course, we've already said I get a great update on the greenhouse gas policy. And there's also information about the 10-year plan. And there is some presentation about discussing the capacity volume, whether it's regionally as a regionally significant project, or it's a capacity building project or something to that effect, which looks like that one is going to be a fun one to discuss. So we'll bring back the report for those next month.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for the stack update from Commissioner Williams? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the ED's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real briefly, 2 items. You have flyers in the back of the room around our annual retirement series that we are co-sponsoring along with Ent Credit Union. Just want to give a shout out to Ent. They do an awesome job helping us to get the word out and helping us to hold these events. But flyers in the back of the room, and just urge you to help us spread the word. Second item real quick, and not to dwell on this, but if folks have comments that they want to bring forward to me, I may need to bring an employee handbook update in May around Juneteenth. I know it was passed recently by the state. It was passed last year by the feds, not addressed in our employee handbook personnel policies. I don't know that we need to do anything necessarily, but I need to dig into it along with Barb Watson, our HR manager. One thing we're going to do is reach out to the local jurisdictions and find out what you all are doing, if anything. So we'll be in touch with your respective HR folks at each jurisdiction. But if anybody has any feedback they want to provide, feel free to let me know. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for Andy? Yes, Mr. Zulaga.
Andy, are these online or are they at a physical location?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. Jessica, can you help me with that? The End Retirement Series, all online, they are all remote for now. We found that we got really great participation over the past year and a half, I think, as we were doing these. I don't know if we're going to go to hybrid soon.
The one thing that we're doing and really supporting is for local libraries and senior centers to do watch parties, so that there's a physical location for seniors who do not have good access to internet, or not just seniors, but people who are interested in retirement information. So that's something that we're also helping coordinate with any location that's interested. But yes, they are fully webinars at this point. And we've got the spring session and a fall session. So
Jody, you may want to amplify.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, we've actually expanded that to statewide. So we work with our AAA network across the state to distribute these and make this available for all seniors statewide now. So, and it has doubled from the 5, which has been the normal, to 10, and we actually expanded that during COVID because of the ability to go hybrid.
And just to make sure I understand that it is hybrid, right? It's both can be in person and online, because
I'm sorry, I misspoke. Right now, it's all web-based. It's all
web-based.
Zoom-based right now to make sure that we can maximize attendance.
Yeah, I'm sure that the Zoom part of it increases attendance, but I'm also well aware that a lot of seniors have trouble trying to figure out how to get to a meeting online. So I just think you've got to, my recommendation is you have offerings that are in person for some people. Yeah.
And we are moving that way back to some of the other offerings that we do, the Medicare 101, Social Security 101s, those kind of things. We are moving back to bringing those in person through both locations here and ultimately with some of our other partners. With the retirement series, we've been very fortunate that we have speakers from across the state as well. So we're really able to draw on the best speakers for the topics at hand. So there's a lot going on, a lot in process, and we're maximizing who we get to speak in front of. So thanks so much.
All right, thank you. All right, any questions on any of those items that were just brought up? Yes,
Just a
Commissioner
quick
Williams.
question. On the Juneteenth legislation, is that going to start being a holiday this year? I don't know what the effective date of it was, or will it be next year?
It was my understanding that it was this year, but I wouldn't bet the house on that. That was
Yeah, I think it's
Federal
a
this year?
federal this
Okay.
year. Because if it's not effective this year, then we don't have to make an immediate decision.
that would help us a lot. And like I said,
Okay.
we're just now digging into it. So that would give us more time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for bringing that point up. Any other questions for the executive director? I guess, yeah, those kind of tail end of that, sorry. Yeah. We have member entity announcements at this point. Does anybody have any items they'd like to bring up that might be going on in their community? Maybe wanting to invite members of the board to it, something to that effect? All right, and hearing none, just as a reminder, our May PPACG board meeting is 11 May, same time, 9 a.m. Looking forward to that. And just one last opportunity for anybody if they have any final comments on any item. Oh, yes, Commissioner Stone.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question out of courtesy to our active duty representatives that are online. Has it ever been talked about or considered perhaps for these folks representing military installations to give a report earlier in the meeting? So we discuss very valuable and important things in this meeting that may not be directly relevant to those people. And I appreciate their patience. And I realize they're probably multitasking. But just as a citizen that appreciates their service, I'd love it if their attention was solely focused on security and armed forces, except for the 10 minutes where they might be giving a report.
I think that is an excellent question. Maybe I could ask Andy to take up that idea and maybe offer a proposal. And you can maybe do that in consultation with our base partners and see if that would be of any benefit to them. Certainly worthwhile in taking a look at. Yes, Councilwoman. Hendrim?
Yeah, I just did think of something just to share. It's something that as it past occurred, but it really impacts Colorado Springs and El Paso County. Safe Passage, the Safe Passage location has been, the ribbon has been cut and the dedication happened last week. For those of you who aren't aware of it, it is a co-location and collaborative effort of multiple agencies serving children of abuse. And it's the only thing like it in the state. It's very child-centered and child-first. I believe you were there.
I was
so
at
for
the,
that,
yeah,
it was
ribbon
quite
cutting.
a moving, actually, dedication. And just want people to be aware of that. And we should feel very proud to have that in our region because it's really unique and is serving children of abuse in a pretty significant way. And learn more about it. I'd be happy to tell you more, but yeah.
Yeah, and maybe just very briefly, I was also at the that ceremony to officially open it. One of the advantages of what they have there, which is co-location of several services, is I guess the experience that children have had in the past when they've been abused is they would get interviewed by one agency, then they would maybe go back to their family, then they would get interviewed by a second, and then maybe sometimes a third or a fourth agency. And they'd go through this long process of interviews interspersed by maybe being in an environment that isn't safe. This facility actually offers the opportunity to get all of those interviews addressed in a much shorter time frame that reduces the risk to the child should there in fact really be claimed abuse by the child. So it's interesting and it is unique, and we have it here in Colorado Springs. So that was one of those interesting things I saw. Mr. Gardine.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, Mr. Chairman. Where's this facility at?
It's on the west side on just south of Cimarron. What's the name of the street? Not Bot.
Yeah. It's
What is the name of-
east of Manitou Springs and it's
where
west
the
of
Silver Key
25.
used to be, near where Silver Key used to be years ago.
Yeah.
If that helps. Yeah.
Okay, I
I'll
really
get you the
appreciate
address.
that, 'cause
Yeah.
We have a SRO officer out of Callahan right now
Uh-huh.
that has actually been impacting the high school and the middle school area. And our officer is actually going to be a low impact type officer, so he's approachable.
That's great.
Okay, so but we need to have this, the name of this facility and its location.
Yeah, that's
I'll
great.
I'll get that. I'll get that for you right now. I'll look it up.
Thank you.
And generally speaking, it's in an area, a couple blocks off of Highway 24 on the south side of 24 across from Old Colorado City. So it's in that area. So it's west of I-25, east of Manitou Springs and south of 24. Yeah, not too far from Red Rocks. Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Zulaga?
I'd just like to add one other part of what impressed me about the facility is the combination with the police department. So the investigative resources are all there, like it just all happens at once. I was very impressed with the tour.
Yep, thank you. It looks like a great opportunity to really help. And I think, Mayor, you had your hand raised?
We did. I would just like to express our condolences to El Paso County Sheriff's Officer and the loss of Officer Jinks. In the words of our chief last night, he gave his life doing his job.
I appreciate those kind of kind words. Our sheriffs, deputy sheriffs, our canines, our canine units continue to be dedicated to public safety in our community. And it is a sad day when they're attacked and we have losses. And it's one of those things for me. I just make this point. I served 28 years in the Air Force, commanded large organizations, including several that were overseas, and never lost anybody under my watch. I've lost 2 deputy sheriffs as a county commissioner. So in some respects, the battle is at home. So thank you for that. All right, any other comments from any of the other members of this board? All right, ladies and gentlemen, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for everybody's participation and you have a great day.
Yep. So it sounds too late this year.